death with my worst enemy. This is a no-go, I just can't take hold. This is a danger zone, back up and get me home. This is a no-go, I just can't take hold. This is a danger zone, back up and get me. So put your hand in mine, follow me.
A very warm welcome to the EMO Hannover Relaunch Conference. We're delighted to have you with us. The question is, how will it look like, the new EMO Hannover, the world's leading trade fair for production technology? That's what we will be discussing today, and we have a very exciting agenda. First of all, thank you very much for being with us today. I am Carmen, Hentschel, and I'm looking forward to accompanying you to today's event, in the upcoming hours, together with experts from the world of business and policy making. We will look at the latest trends and developments and what businesses must do now in order to be successful tomorrow. All of these things we will be looking at tomorrow, and I would like to invite you to take part in this. This is not a one-way street, us talking to you. No, instead we would like to invite you to be part of the discussion and shape it. How can you do that? That's very simple. Please send us your questions for our speakers through the chat, and we will include it in our discussions. Now and then we will invite you to little surveys through the survey button, and we invite you to give us your opinions so that we can find out what's going on in the sector. And of course, by using the hashtag EMO2023, you can let us know what you think about today's event. And of course, through that hashtag, you will be able to see what other listeners and participants think about the event. I would like to introduce to you now today's host from Frankfurt, the Managing Director of the VDW, the German Machine Tool Builders Association, Mr. Wilfried Schäfer. Hello and welcome. We're delighted to have you with us today. Good morning, Ms. Hentschel, Mr. Schäfer. One question to you. You talk to many different people. What is the atmosphere in the industry? Well, at the moment, I think the atmosphere is positive. Since the beginning of the year, we've had good developments in the country, but also abroad. So we're very positive for the future. That positive spirit is very delighting for us. And dear listeners, this is our first little survey. Let's try the survey. On the right side of the screen, you can use the survey for letting us know what city are you tuned in from. Where are you from? Mr. Schäfer, let's wait just a little moment for our listeners to give us a few answers. Do you have a first impression, a first opinion? Where do you think our listeners are from? We've invited many representatives of the press, of many different editing houses from the south of Germany. But we didn't just invite the machine tool industry, but anybody along the production chain. So I think there will be listeners from outside of Germany too, from Europe. Let's see whether there are first results of this survey. That's always the situation when we have a live event. People can tune in from the entire world. And that's, of course, why we sometimes have to wait a little before we can see their opinions. The results are really growing. We're very excited to see how many people are actually participating. So the numbers are increasing. That's great. I don't think we have many participants yet from Asia or America, but yes, this is a very positive picture. great. These surveys are really working out very well. So the next question is, have you ever been to the EMO in Hanover? Yes or no? So this is a yes or no question. Have you ever been to the EMO? Mr. Schäfer, you have been to many EMO fairs. Do you always meet the same people, or is that always changing? Do you meet different people? Well, regarding the exhibitors, of course, we know them all, but the technologies are, of course, evolving regarding software and IT. We were able to invite different startups, and there were always new partners coming in, and our other trade show partners and partners from the associations, they are always changing too. So let's look at how many newbies are with us. Are there results already from the survey? Are there people that you've been meeting at every EMO for decades now? Yes, of course, they exist, and these are very continuous encounters, and it's very beautiful to see these people over and over again. Look at this, Mr. Schäfer. 86% of people have already been to the EMO. So that probably means that this very successful fair, people keep coming back. So we will shortly look into the future of this trade fair, but what comes to your mind when thinking back to the past EMOs? The last EMO in 2019, that was the last EMO I've been to, and my memories are very vivid. Great exhibitions, great machines. We could see them all live on stage in 17 exhibition halls in 2017, just the same, and that's our goal for 2023 too. Thank you very much. I would like to pass the floor to you now. Dear listeners, the chat is open. If you have any questions to Mr. Schäfer, please just let us know in the chat, and we will pick them up in the Q&A session.
Ladies and gentlemen, press representatives, a very warm welcome. Now, we had to do for almost 2 years without any trade fair, at least in Europe. I haven't been to any trade fair for 2 years now. We saw that digitally a lot is possible, but, this just cannot compensate for the personal encounters and the emotional aspects in our business. And let me assure you that I would have loved to talk to you personally. We had prepared ourselves for such an option. Alas, the framework conditions did not allow for it. Even before the pandemic, right after EMO 2019, we decided to reposition and to relaunch EMO Hannover. And, looking at the challenges that we had to encounter during the pandemic for trade fairs confirmed this approach. So, with this in mind, I would like to once again welcome you to the EMO Relaunch Conference. And I'd like to say, hello, EMO community. It's good to have you with us. It's great that you have joined us for this event. And hopefully you will stay with us over the next few months until EMO 2023. Now, you may have wondered what prompted us to do a EMO relaunch. After all, we had 2 successful events back in 2017 and 2019. Now, the claim for a leading trade fair is to be pointing the way, acting as a trendsetter, offering solutions and addressing questions. So along these lines, EMO Hannover, even more so than in the past, has to offer guidance. This means everybody along the value chain in production technology and also our customers. We are all called upon to help shape the different transformation processes and implement them. As far as our customers are concerned, we are witnessing a lot of change in many industries, in products and processes, in the automotive industry, energy generation, but also in the food industry when you think about packaging, for example, which has a direct impact on the metalworking industry. Now, there are new technical options, new consumer patterns. This causes and accelerates this trend, and this is both visible in B2B and in the B2C segment too. The challenges of digitization permeate industry and society. They affect education questions, life cycle assessment of a product. It's about the optimization of production processes. We encounter digitization almost everywhere. Over the past few months, we could see what digital formats and tools are capable of providing. However, we had to painfully learn what functional deficits there still are, and that sometimes there are difficulties for digital solutions to gain acceptance. Last but not least, because of the constant change, we are called upon to act in terms of the framework conditions. I'm talking about data privacy and energy efficiency, supply chain actions. All of this is subject to rules and regulations in Europe, and we need to discuss this in a social dialogue which will always have an impact on industrial production. So we need to show that production technology is always part of the process, and almost always it's also part of the solution, even though this tends to be neglected in public discourse. And that's why it's quite clear that the leading trade fair for production needs to address these transformation questions. We need to identify the interactions that come from that, and we need to identify solutions. EMO Hannover not only needs to be a leading trade fair, in terms of covering the entire product range, more so than in the past, it needs to act as an innovation and communication platform for production technology. It needs to strike up a dialogue between supply and demand and reflect the future of production. The new claim of EMO Hannover expresses this in a nutshell. Innovate Manufacturing. It's both a request and a claim at the same time. It's a claim for us as organizers to come up with innovations, solutions, and to reflect current production trends. It's also a request for our customers to use EMO Hannover to get into a dialogue with the exhibitors and to show and design the future of their production solutions. Innovate Manufacturing means actively reaching out to all stakeholders and describes the way we intend to find solutions and bring about a discussion in society. As I mentioned before, it's about more than just a presenting product. It's about having a dialogue, networking, the exchange of experience. These are also important components of the trade fair platform, and we believe that this will gain in significance, especially when it comes to digital communication formats. And here we as organizers are called upon to offer contents and structures. With our new communication concept, we are highlighting just this. Exhibitors and visitors will be able to use the columns Communication, Connect, Digital and Conference, suitable and interesting offerings and formats, and the 4 EMO colors reflect this structure. EMO Communication is about striking up a dialogue. It's about actively reaching out to target groups. It's about addressing key topics. This will characterize our communication. We want to have a discussion with you. We need your feedback because this is key for everybody along the value chain, and this should be reflected at the EMO Hannover platform. This is reflected in the look and feel of the new EMO corporate design. So we are reaching out to you. We're looking forward to having a dialogue with you over the next few years as we approach EMO Hannover 2023. EMO Connect is next. This is about networking. It's about the exchange of experience. It's about the convergence of interests. But it's also about social events to deepen one's relationships. At the key industry events, experts from industry and science internationally will meet. These are active formats, and they will allow people to exchange their points of view, their experience. Interaction will play the key role here, because here people can match their interests and can discuss open questions in a discourse. EMO Community will be a platform to get people talking, and that's the target of EMO Connect. Now, initially, I mentioned the experience with digital formats over the past few months. You may have used such formats as a passive viewer or as a party offering information. This is well established now in B2B. In the combination with an on-site trade fair, these digital tools are a valuable addition to get people in touch with one another. EMO Hannover, with this hybrid offering, will provide more information. Additional information channels will be offered, and even beyond the trade fair date, this will serve as a contact point where exhibitors, visitors, and external experts can come together and get talking. Knowledge transfer, infotainment on recent trends and questions are of huge importance for everybody at EMO. Expert knowledge, the exchange of experience, scientific input on future topics offer guidance and can support decision-making processes when it comes to future investment. Especially when it comes to the transformation processes, there is a need to discuss detailed questions such as cybersecurity or energy efficiency. Around the trade fair, new formats such as the EMO Masterclass can be used to offer further education offerings, and this might lead to interesting business contacts at the trade fair. EMO Hannover will thus become a stage for products, for knowledge and for information regarding production technology. With this new design, we are reaching out to all partners along the value chain, and we will strike up a dialogue in a hybrid fashion on 365 days in the year. So I'd like you to invite you to join us. Please do talk to us, talk to one another, because dialogue and the exchange of knowledge leads to added value. So the new corporate design of EMO Hannover is geared towards dialogue. The claim, the statements, and the messages are designed to get people's attention, to make them enthusiastic for EMO Hannover. The variety of competences and interests of the target groups and the people who come to EMO Hannover need to be used. We need to activate them, and we need to get people talking to one another. However, we are also showing the convergence of hardware, software, and IT, which will gain in significance in the future. Digitization is a key feature of production. The digital twin, which is the digital reflection of knowledge, will always be visible and highlight the convergence of production technology and IT. This is both true for products such as the robot hand, which you can see in the top right corner of this image. So this stands for the digital twin. Or this also applies to processes such as the drilling process, which you can find a picture of on the new EMO website. So why don't you go there, because you can find a host of information there. And please do get in touch with us over the next few weeks and months. Initially, I mentioned that innovation and the further development in production technology will not only be impacted by technical issues and possibilities. After all, it will be about technical implementation and the traditional aspects of productivity, quality, and flexibility, because at the end of the day, you want to be able to produce a component. However, we are also impacted by the aforementioned transformation processes outside of production technology, which are becoming more and more important. And this is why the contents of our communication efforts will also reflect social topics. They will be reflected in the requirements of production technology, and they will be visible as product solutions or knowledge offerings. They will have an impact on the production conception, the production design in a holistic sense. Now, I guess you're very much familiar with the technical issues. They comprise, the entire value chain in production. In the future, however, we will be increasingly focusing on the software, IT, along the entire value chain to be aiming for an overall solution. Smart manufacturing is the synonym in this respect. We will also be focusing more strongly on social issues and their impact on production technology. For us, it's important to establish a dialogue forum at EMO Hannover to ask questions and to impart knowledge and information. These topics are not static, they are constantly changing. So we want to be focusing both on production technology but also on the interaction with our key customer segments, and here we are primarily focusing on business, sustainability and connectivity. So discussing these topics will be a key aspect and is a key aspect of our claim, Innovate Manufacturing, because after all, we need to find answers and solutions for all stakeholders in the EMO community. So we will be picking up these topics as part of our future insights, and we will start doing so today. The future of business, the future of connectivity, and the future of sustainability production, these are the key topics that we're going to be addressing going forward. And it's quite clear that digitization will be a highlight. Mobile working during the pandemic has triggered a discussion about the effectiveness, about teamwork and leadership. And what is possible in the office arena may not necessarily be able to be replicated on the shop floor. You know, the redesign of business processes and entirely new business models concern our providers and our customers. It's not only software as a service. We're now talking about production as a service. People are currently trying out these models and have even started implementing them. The future of business will address a wide range of different topics. We will also be talking about legal issues, the protection of intellectual property rights. We'll be looking at specific market interactions. We'll be looking at education and further education in well-established professions. A lot of these issues will be relevant for production technology too. And if you take a closer look, it will be about how to realize technical solutions, assistance systems, collaborative automation, or visualization solutions. All of this will be showcased at EMO Hannover in the future. Digitization in production is a buzzword, and we're talking about this in terms of Industry 4.0 and IIoT. Now, behind these buzzwords, there's a lot of complex, detailed questions and tasks which are required for consistently digitized features and functionalities. There are solutions available already. A lot of things are still on the development stage. And despite proprietary solutions, there's only a limited amount of holistic solutions. And in our industry, which is very big on medium-sized companies, this presents a big challenge. And that's why we're going to also be focusing on digitization under the headline, The Future of Connectivity. We're going to be talking about different formats. There's going to be special exhibitions at EMO Hannover dedicated to just this topic, because AI, virtual reality, and 5G is progressing all the time, even though the basics of standardized open data exchange has not been fully solved yet. The climate crisis, of course, has a major impact on the discourse in society and politics. The sixth IPCC assessment report describes the impact of climate change. Our politicians are coming under increasing pressure. They are defining milestones, such as in the Green Deal of the EU or the German Climate Change Act of this year. The business community needs to position itself on these issues and come up with solutions for decarbonization. From the point of view of production, this is a highly complex issue compared to mobility, much more complex than mobility. There can be no one-size-fits-all solution for energy and resource efficiency. At the same time, production technology comes with a part of the solution for more carbon neutrality in selected customer industries. Here, technical and organizational measures will come into play, which can be optimized in the context of digitization. The future of sustainability in production is a topic that will focus on just that. It'll be about the translation of framework conditions for production technologies. It's about imparting recent knowledge, and it will be about best practice at the trade fair. And that's something that is here to stay, even beyond EMO 2023. And today we are starting this debate that we want to see. We are happy to see that you've joined us. We would like to invite you to join us going forward. The General Commissioner of EMO Hannover will soon take over from me, and he will inform you about the recent details. After that, there will be a short break, after which we will start talking about the three topics, the future insights. I'm very much looking forward to that because we've put together a great panel, and they will talk about the issues I just mentioned. So please do give us your feedback. Please hand in your questions. I'll be happy to answer them later on. And now I'd like to show you our new trailer to see what EMO 2023 will be all about. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you very much, Dr. Schäfer, for your presentation. We've received a number of questions from our audience, which I'd like to put to you. If you've got further questions, ladies and gentlemen, please do keep them coming in. First question is about the EMO 2023. Is it planned as a hybrid event? The answer is yes. We are going to come up with a wide range of different formats, knowledge transfer, product presentations. We will be offering formats which will be available in a digital fashion for our visitors. Next question. Would you have also come up with this new concept had it not been for the COVID-19 pandemic? The answer is yes. Why? Because we believe that we have to face up to the future challenges as one of the leading trade fairs. So our title, being a leading trade fair, is something that we cannot take for granted. We have to earn this title time and time again. So as I said, even after EMO 2019, we felt it was time to do a relaunch, and that's why we're doing just that when it comes to EMO 2023. Because of the COVID-19 pandemic, will it be a 3G or a 2G? Now we're talking about the 2023. Hopefully, we don't have to think about, admitting only vaccinated people, etc. next time around. Have the exhibitors asked for a new concept? Though they didn't really call for a new concept, because 2017 and 2019 were highly successful trade fairs. The response from exhibitors was great. However, after the trade fairs, we started talking to a big number of exhibitors worldwide in different product areas, and we showed them what we felt the new EMO could look like. So we've come up with this new concept in a dialogue with our exhibitors, and that's why we believe that we've managed to pick up the things that concern them most. Question. Under these new framework conditions, how shall people assess the trade fair visit? What's the basics for the leads? Well, it's the direct discussions, of course, and this is why the future approach will be focusing more strongly on a direct dialogue. People will be able to strike up a dialogue not only at the trade fair booths, but they may be able to use, different touch points, digital touch points, on-site touch points before and even during the trade fair. Don't you think that your digital offerings might cannibalize the on-site trade fair experience for international visitors? No, we don't think so, because the experience at an on-site trade fair is unparalleled. This is where you will find practical showcase examples, so we don't believe there's a risk of cannibalization. And looking at the feedback we've received over the past 18 months is that both the exhibitors and trade fair visitors were not exactly happy with a digital trade fair only. Everybody is so much looking forward to an on-site trade fair, and we believe that digital additional offerings are just that, additional offerings to the on-site trade fair. Now, people may be joining us today during the event, while the event is ongoing already. So once again, will EMO 2023 be a digital trade fair only? No, it will be an on-site trade fair first and foremost. What will be the difference of EMO 2023 and EMO 2019? Well, the difference between these two trade fairs will be that EMO 2023 will cover an even broader range of new products. The value chain will be presented in its entirety. There will be a lot of digital aspects, and this will certainly go down very well with our visitors. What about foreign exhibitors and visitors? Will they be addressed differently than in the past? No, of course not. But, of course, we will try to identify the topics that interest them most. If there are additional topics, which I cannot see for the time being, we would, of course, address them. The question will only be about cultural differences in the way we reach out to people. But one thing is sure, we will try and reach out to all of our customers, regardless of where they come from. Just think about the EMO World Tour. Thank you very much, Dr. Schäfer. Thank you very much, Ms. Hentschel. Now, ladies and gentlemen, it's time for today's first keynote speech. It will focus on the challenges of production technology in 2023 and beyond. I would like to extend a very warm welcome to the General Commissioner of EMO Hannover 2023, Martin Welcker. It's good to have you, Mr. Welcker. It's great to have you here.
Good morning, Ms. Hentschel. I'm delighted to be here. One first question. You are an entrepreneur yourself. What do you think is the situation of the economy in Germany? What is happening in the market? The business is going well. The demand is high. The question is, at the moment, where do we get our material from, the amounts that we need, and also at the prices that we're used to before the pandemic. So this is very positive. Yes, I think that the tool manufacturing industry is in a positive situation other than the challenges that we're used to facing. We have new listeners, and to you again, you can send us your questions in the chat and we will include them here in the discussion with Mr. Welcker. Thank you very much, and I would like to pass the floor to you. Thank you very much. A very warm welcome to all of you here in this room, but also to all of you out there in front of your screens, to all of you listening out there, to all of you who are interested in the EMO Hello Future of Production. As General Commissioner of EMO Hannover 2023, may I extend a warm welcome to you all to our relaunch event for the trade fair EMO Hannover 2023. From the point of view of an entrepreneur and an exhibitor, I can say that the claim Innovate Manufacturing really captures the mood of the sector. Our customers are constantly expecting us to reinvent ourselves again and again. And it is therefore imperative that we position ourselves as best as possible so as to retain our competitiveness in the future. The outcome is to be seen and experienced every 2 years at EMO. As the world's leading trade fair, it is the global showcase for production technology. It demonstrates the full breadth and depth of the technologies required for renewing and optimizing industrial production. However, demands are increasingly extending to include subjects that do not fall within the classic core of business of production outfitters. And so I believe that the extension of EMO with a conscious focus on connectivity, sustainability, and the future of business is a timely and appropriate way to address the issues that we all must face as private individuals, as businesses, as customers, and as suppliers. The relaunch also spells out how even established trade fairs have to position themselves for the future. The pandemic has caused upheaval on many fronts. No one knows how we will travel in the future, or whether customers will only prepare their investments online, or whether digital business models will require totally different channels in order to retain customers. But we are working on the assumption that the trade fair business will no longer be purely restricted to the actual time of the event itself, but that in future we will practically be something that takes place 365 days a year, whatever form that may take. Digital formats make this possible, and they will undoubtedly continue to drive further developments in the future. Our new EMO profile takes this into account and lends clear expression to the pioneering role of our industry. At today's event, we now want to lay the foundation for discussing the future of our industry, which is faced globally with enormous challenges. The energy transition, climate change, sustainability in production, new competitors, the transformation of key customer industries, digitization, changes in the employment world, new data-driven business models, and many more. Besides, these are the buzzwords. On some of them, light will be shed in the course of today. They reflect how we are part of a larger whole. Social discourses on data protection, on climate change, on changes in the employment world brought about by various influences, these all demand that we too make our own contribution. Industrial production is right at the center of all of these topics, even if that fact is not always fully appreciated. With our production technology, we are enablers for the entire world of production, as well as for the processes with which our customers produce their goods. Nothing is possible without machine tools. And we are active agents in the sense of being producers by ourselves. Our competitiveness, like that of our customers, is consequently decisive for the success of industrial production, which in turn is only too often the foundation for the wealth and prosperity of a country. EMO itself is also subject to change. Since 1975, it has been the world's leading trade fair for metalworking. It is now more than that. It encompasses the entire value chain, primarily integrating the IT that is so very essential for continuing to drive forward intelligent factory networking. For a short time, every 2 years, it calls together the international community in one place. Exhibitors and customers from around the world, experts from practice and science, users who can equally well be other exhibitors, seek orientation and inspiration for solving their manufacturing challenges. This is why participating at EMO Hannover is coupled with the expectation of seeing and experiencing the latest trends. Exhibitors are the embodiment of this guarantee, and visitors should not expect any less. Allow me to share a few thoughts with you now on our leading topics, the future of business, focusing today on the future of employment, digital transformation, and sustainability in production. In doing so, I don't want to forget the traditional values for our sector. Quality. This means reliability, efficiency, flexibility. They all continue to play a key role for the success of products and of companies. and all of these topics contribute towards Innovate Manufacturing. Let us begin with a topic that has occupied us more than any other these past years, the digital transformation in all its facets. Now, strictly speaking, digitization is nothing new for machine tool manufacturing. At the latest, it entered the scene with the introduction of CNC controllers. To that extent, our sector was always a pioneer in the use of groundbreaking technologies. But the world has continued to move on. Digitization used to be heavily characterized by the B2B environment, and key stimuli emerged from there. But since the 1990s, and at the latest since the introduction of cloud computing and smartphones, developments in the industrial environment have been influenced by consumer technology B2C, thereby setting new challenges before us. As machine builders or manufacturing engineers, we are accustomed to thinking in physical terms. The quality of a machine depends directly on the manufacturing quality of its parts. Dimensional accuracy, surface qualities, tolerances. These cannot be digitized away, so to say, but must be produced within the scope of the physically possible. Whereas in the past, digitization was an important supporting tool to this end, expectations have now been reversed. Everything must be digitized as quickly as possible. For this, we need new partners who are more at home in the world of data. But to some degree, this also changes the rules of the game on the market. And so we must make every effort to learn to communicate as equals with these partners and to avoid becoming technologically dependent on them. I would like to expand on these developments in the following. The predominant topic is the data-driven economy. Data provide us with transparency, more effective business processes, improved knowledge, and, all told, even a better world, if we are to believe some experts in the IT scene. I would tend to agree to the extent that improved knowledge of products and processes is, in principle, a good starting point for progressive optimization. This goes hand in hand with leaner processes, greater efficiency, and reduced waste. And so we all wish to, indeed we must, make the effort to gather the necessary information and to make it accessible. Globally widespread open interfaces such as those based on OPC UA, for which the VDW and the VDMA's UMATI initiative, Universal Machine Technology Interface, is making the case. They are an important aspect in this. A great many competitors throughout the world are working together to develop common open interfaces for their products. For closed and proprietary interfaces are a thing of the past. They hinder the networking of various subsystems for joint use. And the data can flow freely and be used easily. Once data are out in the world, however, the question arises of who they belong to, who is allowed to use them, and how to prevent misuse of them. And fortunately, there's social discourse on this issue, which at heart is a question of trust. Private individuals and companies have to trust that the service providers to whom they give their data will exercise caution in how they use them and will not simply sell them for a profit to the next competitor. This raises special questions for the world of production technology. How can we find partners we can trust? What technologies can we manage ourselves? And what are we to do with those that we cannot manage alone? How can we succeed in extending our product portfolio to include digital business models without neglecting the physical machines at the core? What solutions do our customers expect, and what are they generally willing to pay for? And how are we to cope with legal parameters that vary hugely from country to country, where, for example, data protection or the development of new technologies such as artificial intelligence are concerned? We find ourselves in a dynamic process that we can't just sit and wait for. As far as what is possible, we are already agile in creating solutions for our customers' added value, and you will be able to witness this at EMO Hannover. There are many different approaches to this. For example, interoperability between machines and IT allows for digital twins. These can be used for better and better simulation of machine behavior and production planning, thereby further reducing non-productive or idle times. But they also facilitate far greater flexibility and modularity in process chains. On the one hand, this is to be seen in the designing of products, with the aid of machines that themselves are designed more modularly and can thus be more individually adjusted to customers' requirements. On the other hand, however, this is also to be seen in the use of existing machinery that can be more fully utilized by means of intelligent enterprise resource planning, not only with a single company, but also more comprehensively along the full supply chain on the basis of platform concepts. Artificial intelligence, which is always being further refined, is one more element in this, whereby I'm explicitly focusing on the kind of machine learning that makes decisions within predefined parameters, so that it has no negative repercussions for the safety of the machine or the products. But one thing is clear. In order to develop new business models on the basis of digitization and data analysis, the domain knowledge of machine builders and users remains indispensable. Complex, highly individualized investment goods require a profound knowledge of processes and process chains. This generates clearly measurable added value for customers. How this can be achieved is as varied as our sector and as our customers, and as varied as the different solutions that you will be able to witness at EMO Hannover 2023. A specific example of where data will have an important contribution to make in the future is the wide and crucial topic area of sustainability, and especially of sustainable production. For data help our customers, the users, to determine and constantly improve their environmental footprint. Around the globe, the current quest is for answers to the question of how we can reduce or halt the man-made influence on climate change. Almost without any exception, the major political agenda have taken this on board, and we have to ask ourselves, what consequences does this have for production, the means of production, and our production sites? Machine tools mark the beginning of all industrial production. Yet, what we deliver is not monofunctional end products, but flexible systems that enable our customers to manufacture their products and to design them more and more efficiently in the process. To that extent, machine tools in themselves don't offer solutions for sustainability in the sense of the political discourse. But they are a substantial part of the solution in the sense of leverage effects arising from the manufactured goods. Let us take a brief look at a traditional example, the combustion engine. Even if political opinion is that its days are numbered, it is a prime example of how innovative manufacturing technology contributes to sustainability. increasingly narrow tolerance ranges, the processing of new materials and coatings, production of highly complex optimized combustion chamber geometries. All of this has increased manufacturing complexity and, along with it, the energy consumption required. This nevertheless falls far behind the massive savings that the millions of motors on the roads have achieved. Shifts in emphasis are to be expected from the energy and mobility revolution. But no matter whether electric drives, wind turbines, hydropower plants, fuel cells, or energy storage systems are to be produced, it is clear that we will make our contribution as demanded by our customers once more in all our diversity. Sustainability in manufacturing technology arises out of the interaction between customers' demands on their products, the derivative manufacturing concept, the equipment and tools applied, and their efficient, sustainable use. Facilitating this is and remains the core business of our sector, from serial products all the way to individual customized solutions. And precisely this will be revealed in all its facets at EMO Hannover 2023. But for all these exciting developments, it would be wrong to forget where the core business of the machine tool industry as production, equipment supplier and enabler lies. Stable processes, comprehensive knowledge about them, and the quality of the manufactured products still remain the dominating aspects for investment goods. Productivity, precision, and quality continue to be the drivers of technological innovation. Above all, quality as driver of innovation should never be underestimated, whereby we are talking here about more than the purely measurable quality of manufactured components. It is also a matter of the quality of the machines themselves, of their reliability and availability, to which should be added, in the sense of my earlier remarks, an open, transparent data interface, efficient operations, and straightforward repairs, maintenance, and handling. And so sophisticated, high-quality machines and components, such as you will find at EMO Hannover, ensure effective application and safe and sustainable operation. Even if we are long since familiar with the many details, they are nevertheless being continually developed and improved on. As an example, I need only mention multi-process integration, milling on lathes, turning on milling machines, grinding on both these machines, hybrid systems for additive manufacturing, inline measuring technology, closed-loop applications with data flow back from measuring machines into the production facility, modular machine concepts for customers' individual configuration, 3D printing of non-alloyable or pure materials. The list can be extended indefinitely. This is where the strength of our industry lie, as can be experienced in all conceivable and some surprising facets at EMO Hannover. All of the technologies mentioned allow us to forge ahead towards an efficient and sustainable industry that is fit for the future. But there's one thing we must never forget in the process. The workplace of the future will be totally different. The key question is, how do we want to, how can we, and how should we work in the future? In the developed countries, we are adjusting ourselves to longer working lives in order to counteract demographic change. In developing countries, the desire is to move forward apace, but in some situations, there is a lack of qualified manpower. Which approach is the better one? Large production plants on greenfield sites, or micro-factories with short distances for products and employees? And how will corporate philosophy have to change accordingly? Of course, a lot has already been done, and digitization and automation in particular have already made labor in the workshop a great deal more humane. Where people used to get their hands dirty, there is now hardly any more work in an iron, dust and oil environment. Unhealthy and monotonous routine activities in mass production are increasingly being taken over by collaborative robots, so-called cobots. Exoskeletons ease physically exhausting activities, such as overhead work in the assembly, for example. Besides these ergonomic systems, there are also infotainment systems that support the person operating a machine via tablets or data goggles. And so there are many ways in which systems alleviate work in the factory. We expect machine learning and artificial intelligence in the upcoming years to have the next massive influence on production processes and, consequently, on employees. Production and labor will increasingly be decoupled. In the intelligent factory of the future, intelligent components and machines will organize themselves and optimize processes independently. In no way does this mean, however, that we will be dealing with factories devoid of people. Certain activities will disappear. Monotonous assembly line work in mass production, for example, will be further automated. On the other hand, however, new areas of activity will emerge whereby the transformation of manual workers into knowledge workers brings with it its own special social challenges. The work itself will not decrease. In the factory of the future, the production systems will be networked with modern information technology, and specialist staff will know how to regulate these networked systems. They will make much more far-reaching decisions than today, for example with regard to process optimization or quality assurance. They will have more and more controlling intervention in processes and will devise self-organized solutions for problems. In other words, knowledge will be decentralized in the smart factory. And that, in turn, will go hand in hand with a flattening of conventional hierarchies. This is where we are faced with yet another truly major task. A great deal of convincing power will be necessary in order to take the entire workforce along on the change of corporate philosophy. The question that arises for production equipment suppliers is how they can position themselves in the future on the global market and what support they can offer their customers. For the search for excellent qualified employees is a global reality for many companies. But here too, things come full circle, for this pressure can be alleviated by means of digitization. For example, with suitable assistance systems, learning platforms, or globally distributed cooperation. For this, too, the EMO Hannover is an important port of call, for it is, and always has been, a global platform for professional exchange, for shared learning, and innovations for the work environment in the production of the future. Ladies and gentlemen, in this very limited presentation, I've been able to give no more than a small foretaste of the months and years that lie ahead. I would like to sum up briefly what I see as being the most important of these diverse challenges. First, how, together with a wide range of partners that we need for this, will we achieve the digital transformation, while at the same time preserving the core of our sector as suppliers and enablers of high-quality, highly productive solutions for all challenges in industrial production. Second, what contribution are we making along with our customers towards sustainable manufacturing in a climate-conscious future? How, as both suppliers and manufacturing companies, can we play an active role in shaping the future of business that is viable long-term business models and a socially acceptable future of labor? How can we contribute to shaping the political and regulatory guidelines that we and our environment urgently need, for example, with regard to trustful and responsible dealings with data or the meaningful promotion of energy-efficient production? I believe that the next items on the agenda of our event will provide you with initial, more profound insights into these questions. By that, we will then have entered into dialogue with you, our customers and partners. We will be reaching out to you with greater frequency, both personally and digitally, in order to learn from you what you expect and require of the coming EMO Hannover. And in order to present our next steps to you, for example, as far as the EMO World Tour 2023 is concerned. Accompanying all of this, there will be comprehensive social media communication on #EMO2023. This will advance the building up of the EMO community and contribute towards improved networking. Keep on at it, challenge us, and give us your feedback if you have requests or ideas for the forthcoming event. I am absolutely sure that together with our customers and partners, we as a sector will find competitive solutions for all challenges in the future, just as we have always done in the past. And this will, of course, be reflected by EMO Hannover. Even if we, as its organizers, cannot yet possibly know today all that may lie ahead of us between now and then. Many thanks for your attention. And I would like to pass the ball back to you for your questions and to start off our dialogue. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Welcker. And there are many questions already. Let's start with this. Digitization is more and more important in all sorts of areas. Great telecommunication companies look for offers. Can you offer them anything for more networking? Yes, of course. We are looking for cooperations with telecommunication companies, and we want to do that on a par with them. So we have to make sure that both our interests are represented in the business models, of course. Are policymakers aware of the enabling position of this industry? No, I don't think so. I don't think so. That's the case in Germany. It's not the case in Europe, and maybe even not in the world. And unfortunately, I would like to pick up on the Chinese or even the Japanese. They are very much more aware of the position of the machine tool than people are over here. Digitalization is more and more dynamic. What does that mean for the position of the machine tool industry in Germany and worldwide? When regarding that Germany is not in a top position when it comes to digitalization? Well, this has two aspects, an internal aspect and an external aspect. Internal, yes, that's true. In Germany, we are missing the respective infrastructure. Think of the 5G network. But of course, on a private level, internally, we are doing a lot. Think of OPC-UA. I'm thinking of individual preparations of the different producers, everything they do with their machines. So I think that we're digitally ready to be successful in the global market. Will trade fairs and different sectors be more intertwined with each other? That's a very interesting question. I think that sectors will become more and more closer, of course, through digital networking, because that entails closer digital connections. So trade fairs, yes, of course, too. At the EMO Hannover, there will be more and more digital applications, digital business models. But whether the world of trade shows will be more and more entangled, I'm not sure. There's a focus on sustainability. According to you, in the past, how has the interest in sustainable solutions changed? There is a theoretical interest. But we also have to state that as long as there are no incentives from the market thinking about the pricing of CO2 and the general frameworks for digitalization and data exchange. As long as there are no clear frameworks, it won't play the role that it could be playing. Mechanical engineering and IT speak different languages. Do you think that that's true? I think that communication has really improved. People are coming together. People come from different worlds, so they take their time to actually get into contact. But I can really confirm that the IT sector is trying to understand our sector and vice versa. And we are really improving this in this communication. But of course, here the qualified skilled workers come in again. There is a lack in these workers. We need more of them, and machine tool manufacturers must do more on this. University, of course, universities come in here. We need the respective support. We are missing a little of that support. There's a lack in skilled IT workers, and that's too large regarding the demand for these workers that we have. There is a major election coming up in Germany. What is your wish for that? Clear frameworks, regulatory policy making, less bureaucracy, the Home Office law, the supply chain law. I cannot go into much detail on this. Policymakers have many opportunities to guarantee improvements. When it comes to digitalizing the production, who is the leader in the world? I think Germany is playing a major role, Europe is playing a major role, but I think that the Japanese are very important here, the Chinese too. Who is the leader? Please ask me this again at EMO 2023. So yes, it will be worth it being at EMO 2023. Sustainability in production, is that something where other countries are much more far ahead than Germany? Whether, when it comes to sustainability, other countries are further ahead than Germany. Did I understand that right? Is sustainability in production something where other countries are further ahead than Germany? No, I don't think so. I think that this topic has only now started to evolve. And maybe these developments are not always taking place on German grounds, but they are always initiated by Germans. How can businesses prepare their employees for the changes ahead? In the past, we have already managed all over again to take our employees on board, to inspire them, to motivate them for the challenges ahead. What has changed now is that there are many challenges at once, and we have less time than we used to have. So challenges that managements are facing, and communicating these to their employees and then taking them on board in little steps, that is a much larger challenge. But right now, in Germany, the training situation is in a good situation in Germany. So we need more and more skilled workers in order to push forward this development, and we need this to happen quickly. Thank you very much for your insights and for your clear words, Mr. Welcker. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're now going to have a break until 1 p.m. After that, you'll be in for interesting panel discussions, so please stay tuned. And if you feel like having a musical accompaniment of your lunch break, why don't you leave the sound on your computer on? So see you at 1 p.m. Looking forward to that. Bye-bye. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. A warm welcome to all those who have joined us just now. The future of connectivity is the headline of the upcoming keynote, a very promising title, I believe. What does connectivity really mean? Well, one thing is sure, connectivity is a key interface for communication. We are now going to look at how customers can connect, how they can position themselves and increase their competence, and most importantly, how can customers develop new business models. The next speaker believes that suppliers who only produce hardware are not going to survive in the future. He's been in the business for 31 years, so he has vast experience, and over the course of his career he has analyzed more than 60 factories, always looking at how these factories can become more efficient still. A very warm welcome to the Direct Industry Markets of Germany. He's come all the way from Munich, Mr. Robert Feldmann. You have the floor. Good afternoon, Mr. Feldmann. It's great to have you here with us in Hanover. Now, Mr. Feldmann, you have a lot of experience, as I just said. So can I ask you, what is perhaps the most important lesson learned from your consultancy services over all these years? Well, it's about people, in a nutshell. We need to work with one another, collaborate with all of our different knowledge backgrounds. We need to make our knowledge converge, and this will create the future and make us successful. Who should be most interested in your presentation? Well, all machine builders, of course. Those machine builders who want to join up and want to step into the new world and secure their future. And as I just said, let's wait to see what the future holds. Our topic is connectivity, and this is why we have prepared a short survey for our listeners. We would like to find out from you how important is connectivity for you and your company. So, how important is connectivity for companies? And for those who've just joined us, why don't you look at the right-hand side of the screen? This is the survey button. If you click there, you will be directly forwarded to the survey. You can select from 1 to 10. 1 means no, not at all important. 10 means spot on. Connectivity is of key importance for my company. So how important is connectivity for your company on a scale from 1 to 10? Now let's wait and see. Perhaps a first trend is already emerging from your responses. Okay, why don't we take some more time? Why don't we let you keep voting? Now, we just discussed about, what the future holds, and more particularly what EMO 2023 holds. Apart from that, Mr. Feldmann, what are the key issues that we should be aware of? Well, my presentation is basically on that, and in the meantime, why don't we get started with the presentation proper and wait for the survey results for later. On that note, over to you, Mr. Feldmann. Thank you very much, and thanks for your attention, ladies and gentlemen. My presentation is titled Connectivity, Data and Scaling of Smart Applications. So the focus will be on the question, how can we scale things globally in the new age that we have entered into? Now, let's briefly go back. How far have we come? How far have we come in terms of the Industry 4.0 revolution? In 2011, Industry 4.0 was first proclaimed. Now, looking back over the past 10 years, we need to admit that a lot has happened. We've tried out a lot of new things. The invent and trial phase is basically done. We know that Industry 4.0 works. Now we need to get down to business and try to, put things into practice and scale them. How can we turn the pilots and the proof of concepts into reality? We must not get stuck at the current stage, but how can we make sure that we can increase our learnings by the factor of 100 and 1,000? So it's these kind of things that will count going forward. Now, I'd like to share with you a few thoughts on that. First, data will be at the core of everything that we do. Second, we're going to be talking about smart applications. And third, I'd like to briefly talk about strategies for equipment makers. What does this mean for machine builders? And I will finish off by inviting you to a discussion on what you've heard. Let's start with data. Now, there are databases, as you know, but perhaps we should try and think of data differently. Perhaps we should rather focus on the bank of data. And please do take this verbatim. The data have to be transferred, handed over to a safe bank, like we do with money. You know, money is highly virtual. It's based on IT, basically. And in terms of money, it seems to be working. Money seems to be well stored and safe with our banks, and the same needs to be done for data. So Microsoft offers itself as a safe bank where you can deposit your data in a safe manner. You may do it, on-premise, on the edge, in the cloud. Doesn't matter much. What counts is that your data are stored safely somewhere. The next thing that you want to watch out for is the following question. How do we get from data to 100% adaptability? And that's not going to happen overnight. It's going to be an evolution. And we're going to have to go through 11 steps as far as we are concerned. First is about enabling connectivity. It's about the raw data. Second is the refined data, prepared, processed data, that is. Now, data refinement still is very manual. A lot of work and effort is usually put into the refinement of data. Cleaning up data takes so much time still. Once we've cleaned up our data, we can start building smart applications. And we have come up with initial proof of concepts. The lighthouse factories are on stream. We know it's working, but we're still very far away from where we want to get. Next is scaling. It's about the green chart here. Scaling is about an industrial approach. So we want to have data readily available, conveniently. All of this needs to be backed up by knowledge management. Maintenance tools will be required. It's not going to be acceptable for maintenance works on a machine to take only 3 minutes or half an hour, but you have to wait for 6 months, before your ticket that you've sent to the IT department has been processed. People won't accept that anymore, but it's going to have to be just as convenient and quick as in, on the shop floor, in the hardware. So, and that's why you want to make sure you connect these two worlds in a smart way. Also, coding takes place by manual work still, and that's not going to be very convenient in the future because it has to be standardized. Second thing I want to talk about is the cloud. There's no such thing as the cloud. Cloud is basically only a means to an end. There's going to be use cases which will be based on big data. That's use cases where you can only do the use case once you converge data from different sources. And this will be along the lines of med-optimization. It'll be something like, knowledge acquisition across entire production chains, across different locations. This is where big data will play a crucial role. However, when it comes to your machine on the shop floor, whenever you want to do some optimization, you're rather going to be talking about edge AI or edge products where computing power takes place on site. Now, computers on the shop floor isn't very novel. The new thing is that you network the edge devices with the cloud, that you create a uniform application interface to make it easy to work with, so that all the resources that you need ideally match and work with one another. This is what we understand by IT convergence. You may do this via Azure Arc, where you can use different cloud environments. You can come up with your own Azure stacks, and you can work with all of the IT solutions that you have in your company. So this is the environment that's going to be required in order to have a nice and convenient IT environment in your company. Also, you want to make sure that the system is an open system. There's, the topic of open manufacturing, open supply chain, and industry data models, all of which will be very important so that data can be processed efficiently and effectively. Now, I'd like to share a few thoughts with you on the value of the aforementioned applications. Applications which are data-driven, as I just described, can be divided into 5 subdomains, industry scenarios, as it were, which are based on different topics. Let's first start with human beings. We talk so much about machines and we talk so little about human beings, the operators, the engineers that are responsible for running the factories, that need to think about the production approaches, philosophies, that is. So these people need to be supported. They need to benefit from machine assistance. Second is the customer interface. Third is the factory itself. The entire value chain in supply, and of course also innovation. A lot of innovation is taking place in the virtual realm, and that's why we have to talk about it too. So that's the 5 pillars that you want to watch out for. Now, let's stay on the human aspect for some time, because I believe it's a very important issue. Our machines are at a very high performance level. Take Formula One. This is just one example. But it's only the combination of man and machine which makes you successful. I believe that we have focused too much on machines only and too little on human beings as a production factor. It's only when these 2 factors converge that you will be successful. With the Mercedes, it's quite clear. Why is it that one driver is almost winning all the time, quite reliably so, whilst his colleague who's driving the same car is not as good? What does this mean for the shop floor? Well, it's about, shift work. Why is it that a colleague A from shift 1 is so much better and more profitable than a colleague B from shift 2? Both have been trained, both make certain conditions. Or, imagine having 3 cooks in the same kitchen. And you can be damn sure that they will come up with 3 different dishes. There's no way around it. So we don't give people feedback mechanisms by which they can assess themselves. Am I good? Should I improve my performance? People hardly get any instructions or feedback these days, which is still a big problem. However, we can solve it. Just look at, the consumer sector. Here, there's a number of examples, from the field of smart homes, smart movies. Just take Alexa. What about your navigation system in your car? So, the navigation system in your car used to be an intelligent edge device. It's something, basically, that we've been using for many, many years in our cars. And the modern navigation systems do their calculation efforts in your car whilst being connected to traffic data all the time. Once they receive the latest traffic data, they may change your route and adjust the projections. So these are prescriptive AI systems, as I would call them, systems that give you instructions. And once you follow the instructions, likelihood is that you will reach your destination in good time. It's a standard tool that we are using every day, and we don't think much about it. So what I want to say is that we have been using AI for quite some time in our daily life. Now, what does this mean for the shop floor? Why is it that the machine operator cannot benefit from the same comfort level and convenience as I do in my car? Why do we have this gap? Why do we have this deficit? Why, I'm asking you. This only goes to show that we have so much room for improvement in addition to the machines that we are offering already today. Also, on the shop floor, you want to bear in mind that shop floors differ from one another. There's basically 3 different types of production. We've got asset-intensive production patterns, which are already highly networked by way of control systems. Asset-intensive production systems, which benefit from remote control from the control center. Here, we don't need to talk about digital twins a lot because they already exist. In machinery-intense production, which is the center of this chart, it's very important to do a virtualization, to do a networking. That's why the digital twin plays a key role in machinery-intensive production so as to make things work. And on the right-hand side, you've got an example of people-intensive production. We don't have that a lot in Europe anymore, but here it certainly makes a difference whether a new member of staff is, taught the job within 3 weeks or 3 hours, because simple applications can make a hell of a difference. So once we adopt a human-centric approach and once we start putting people center stage, we will be able to make the next evolutionary step. In terms of the applications, there's basically three different dimensions. First, we've got basic applications. We refer to them as operational visibility, so making data visible. Power VI, Power Apps, etc., you name it. So there's a lot of room for improvement and a lot of development is going on here, but then it's only but the first step. The next step will be applied mathematics. It's about predictive operations. So what you do here is that you add mathematics. You gain time by using a prediction which will inform your action. So it's going to be commoditized over time because the number of suppliers on the market are increasing a lot here. The third area, prescriptive operations, is what I already mentioned. This is something that we are not. That we haven't fully rolled out on the shop floor. There are individual cases where we are using prescriptive operations, but not to a large extent, even though it's, it will come with such tremendous opportunities. Autonomous operations, which is step number 7, is something that people tend to be very much afraid of still. We do have initial solutions in terms of autonomous operations already, but not everybody is comfortable with that yet. But let me tell you, we have operated aircraft via autopilot for many years now. Works very well. When it comes to autonomous vehicles, it's a different story. Complexity would be much reduced if vehicles were not stationary. The complexity of autonomous operations is much lower compared to a self-driving car because machines tend to be stationary, whereas cars tend to be in motion. Now, many people believe that autonomous driving is not a thing of the future because they just don't believe in it. Too much risk involved here. Now, a few closing words on apps. Apps should also take into account human beings. The OT-IT convergence will only be a success if you consider people who have know-how in terms of engineering, in terms of mathematics, analytics, computer science, process engineering. These kind of people need to be brought together in teams, and this is where I'm seeing a big deficit. We will talk about the kind of skills that we need, but very often we stand in our own way because we are poorly organized. We work in organizational silos. Everybody's working in their own respective department. People are not talking to one another. That's why new organizational forms are required. Otherwise, we cannot ever get to OT-IT conversions to begin with. So it's very much about the walls that we have in our heads. Computer scientists have a hard time talking to engineers and vice versa, let alone mathematicians. They tend to be highly abstract. They know the ins and outs about coding, etc., whereas engineers tend to be experts on the shop floor. So these different domains need to be merged. Otherwise, we cannot even be hoping for scaling our activities. So it's mostly an organizational difficulty that stands in our way. What does this mean for machine builders, ladies and gentlemen? Well, what do our customers ultimately want? Customers, that's the factories, that's management. Customers tend to be driven by two things. First, OEE, overall equipment effectiveness. They want to eliminate downtime, increase throughput, reduce some quality losses. Or if you're talking about continuous processes, the question is how to balance energy demands with, throughput, etc. This is a highly complex task which tends to run in real time, and this is where artificial intelligence and software can help make a huge difference. So what I want to say is that we need to touch legacy systems. We all have, a lot of machines in operation, legacy machines out there, and this comes with a huge opportunity to equip these existing machines with smart brains, as it were. It doesn't matter if the machines are 10 years old, you can still retrofit them. So that's the big opportunity for machine builders. Why don't you equip your existing machines with AI external brains, as I call them? Second opportunity for you is to effectively link up to the new ecosystem. The new ecosystem means that on the one hand, you need the database I referred to earlier. Microsoft Azure would be a good idea here, and the other Microsoft services. So you need the bank, the database, the bank where you can retrieve your data like in a real bank. Second, you need a software. You want to be acting like you want to even become a software house, or cooperate with the software providers who can build these AI solutions. So you want to make sure you link up your machines with the AI provider using open APIs. And this is what the new environment would look like. The database would be at the very bottom, Microsoft Azure, with all of its interfaces. Then you would have a number of clients for the suppliers that develop the solutions that you can buy. Or there would be the end customers themselves on the left-hand side on this graph who want to build their own applications. Like building a software provider, an internal software provider. And ideally, these two things work hand in hand next to one another. Feedback we've been getting from our customers is that they don't want to be faced with a lock-in situation. That's something that is rejected unanimously because they would rather go for an open system, which is available after all. And this is what a solution could look like. So you would buy the machines from a certain provider. Software would be bought by yet another provider. People might even opt to build their applications themselves, but everything has to be perfectly compatible with one another based on cloud edge architecture. This in turn means that you as a machine builder have to ask yourselves the question, how am I going to position myself? Very often people are asking me, what should be our future positioning be? Well, I tell them, well, it's not either or, it's and. On the left-hand side, there's the manufacturers themselves. Some of them are pretty far advanced. They've set up their own software company inside. They are building their software themselves, and the machine builder is requested to build a machine with basic connectivity. That's all they need to do, because the software is already available. We do have these kind of customers, and I'm certain you know who I'm talking about. Then there's also customers out there who believe that they cannot do it themselves. Rather, they would ask for solutions and buy them externally. That's part 3 here. And then there's those who have an intelligent pluggability environment. That's what we have observed. And I believe this is the field of tension where machine builders have to position themselves. Not all of you will be able to build their own internal software company, mind you, because you would have to act like a software company with updates, version management, etc. Everything that comes with being a software provider. This will require a certain amount of funding. Not everybody can do it, but I believe that, once you're operating in area 1 or 2, you'll be pretty well off. And here's 2 more thoughts on the issue of connectivity. OPC UA is the big issue here. I believe everybody is familiar with OPC UA, so I don't have to dig any deeper here. Microsoft is involved a lot here. And second, I'd like to bring in the buzzword servitization. I don't know to what extent you're familiar with that. Servitization is all about, offering your products as a service. Offering products as a service can take different forms and shapes. You may opt to either offer value-based services. This is about retrofitting existing machines. You can offer equipment as a service. You can offer entire production patterns as a service. You might even, offer entire production lines as a service. There's a lot of dynamism in here. So I'd like to call upon all of you to also look at the business management side of things, because we're going to see more of that in the future. That's pretty sure. Not least, will this be accelerated by COVID-19? We've been witnessing this. We are involved in these kind of processes. So that's certainly something that you want to be taking rather seriously. So by way of conclusion, you have to focus on human beings. You have to focus on the desired outcome of your company. Third, you want to be using open platforms, open systems. You want to use a safe database. Make sure that your database is reliable and effective and efficient. And you should also think about offering products as a service. Apart from that, why don't we start the Q&A session? I'd call it a day for the time being. Left for me to say is that 95% of Fortune 500 organizations are already using Microsoft Azure. That's OEMs and end users. So it's a broad platform. SKF, for example, has got 100 factories worldwide which are already using the hybrid cloud. They've done so together with Microsoft and Siemens as a partner. And that's a case in point, for a partnership that has worked very well. So along these lines, I suggest we start the Q&A session. Thank you very much, Mr. Feldmann, says the host. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your interest. And we have received a number of questions which I would like to put to you, Mr. Feldmann. You mentioned human beings in the whole process. What is your assessment when it comes to equipping members of staff with the relevant knowledge? How are we going to do that in practice? Answer. Well, it's important to spread the knowledge horizontally, also across different geographies. There are different, learning platforms available to that effect, do-it-yourself platforms, which can come in very handy. Why is it that the programmer of a software can't be expected to put together, a learning video so that people can learn everything about this new piece of software? That's just an example. There's excellent learning, possibilities that you want to put to good use. Next question. Predictive maintenance has not been fully established in companies. Now, you're talking about AI on the shop floor. What's the timeline that you are seeing here? Well, that's not exactly right. There are proofs of concept out there. There's pilot schemes which are working very well. We don't have to invent artificial intelligence applications from scratch. It's already out there working. What about the digital learning factory in Aachen? What counts now is, rolling AI solutions out. And this, brings me back to human beings. As long as there are resistance out there against AI, that's a human factor again. From a technical point of view, it's absolutely possible. How can we get to the North Star if we have such a varied environment in terms of data protection internationally? Well, that's a big issue, you're right. In terms of data, we are seeing a trend towards regionalization in terms of data protection, which doesn't need to be bad, don't get me wrong. In Europe, for example, we are playing by the European rules, and it's a similar thing in other countries. There's just one more element, in Europe that we have to observe, but it's manageable. No doubt about that. So basically, it's a design question. It's an architectural component, data protection, that needs to be factored in when you design new products. It is doable. 20 to 30 years ago, we were up against the same issue. It's not new. We have started, tackling it, and that's why I believe that. You could also do that in partnership. You can, delegate tasks to partners that are better suited looking after that than you. Next question. What's your assessment? How can SMEs be accompanied towards, open interfaces and artificial intelligence? Answer: well, the beautiful thing is that, things develop from ideas into products over time. Just think about your mobile phone apps. It's easy to download a big variety of apps, which doesn't cost a lot, which you may have thought about, not possible 10 years ago. So as far as AI is concerned, we believe that the solutions will become much cheaper going forward, much more standardized. And this is where, what I said about, turning things into a product. Once solutions have been turned into products, they will be much more readily available by many more people, even though it was quite a different story years back. Here's a question from an international listener. Can you please repeat the question? The question is also visible on the screen here. It's about equipment as a service. Okay. Now, equipment as a service, why can't we scale it? Well, I think it's still early days, Reason we haven't scaled it is because we haven't learned to do so. We're still working towards that objective. So it's still early days, but let me also tell you that there's very good examples in pilots out there. We've all learned that the timelines tend to be overestimated, as far to the extent of how far things develop. Bill Gates once said that in the short term, people underestimate how fast things can go, but over 10 years, they underestimate how quickly things go after all. We've seen that ourselves. After 10 years, things tend to be pretty far advanced, but after 2 years only, people tend to be in for a disappointment. So what I want to say is that you'd better, take up things early on. You said that organizations need to be turned upside down. You want to try to, put together and bring together the knowledge of IT people and mechanical engineers. How can that be done? Answer: well, agile ways of working might be a solution. There's agile project teams which work around predefined projects. Now, that's not really new, but the way they organize themselves is what is new. They organize themselves, and very intentionally, you put together these teams with people who naturally wouldn't work together with one another. And even if they have a hard time starting working together, they will find solutions in the end, even though it may not be so easy to begin with. People who haven't ever heard about anything about open architecture, working with them IT experts, not always easy at the beginning, but it's been very successful in software development. The acceleration cycles in software development have been accelerated a lot, and we're going to see the same development, on the shop floor too. Of course, this needs to be backed up by clear sponsorship and clear accountabilities. And perhaps you also want to install a mixed steering committee so that everybody knows who's talking to. That's the way forward. Last minute's up, and here's one last question. In your experience, how many people are prepared to keep up with digitization? How can you make people enthusiastic about AI? We've already touched upon that, but perhaps you can expand on that a little bit further. Well, the example I usually give is from our own private lives. Machine operators tend to be, private human beings in their private capacity. Once you leave the shop floor, people will still be having their smartphone checking their stock portfolio or the weather forecast. So what is being taken for granted outside the factory should also be taken for granted on the shop floor. Let's never forget that our employees are also people in their own private capacity, and in this capacity they are using AI a lot already. So why shouldn't they also be using it to a larger extent on the shop floor? It's a purely emotional response, and also people tend to go for convenient solutions. People don't go to their basement anymore to adjust the temperature settings. We can do that from our living room, and I'd like to see the same operation patterns replicated on the shop floor. Mr. Feldmann, thank you ever so much for this most inspiring presentation. Dr. Schäfer is already waiting for a few final words of goodbye. Now, Mr. Feldmann, most interesting, very inspiring. You've covered the whole range of topics that should interest us. Also, good examples, and thanks for pointing the way forward. Towards the end of your speech, you spoke about human beings taking center stage and how to deal with this on the shop floor. Now, coming back to your example of the car. When it comes to a car, I decide for myself if I want to use digital solutions or apps. It's also up to me to decide whether I want to connect with the car maker and hand over my data, etc. So that's my own decision. No problem so far. Different story in the company. You know, data privacy, data protection, personal data. Quite often people get the impression that this is used for monitoring employees. How can we solve that problem in order to benefit from the efficiency potentials and not to end up in a deadlock? Well, let me try and answer as follows. Artificial intelligence is nothing but software at the end of the day. Let this sink in. AI is nothing but software. It's only a new kind of software, and we've always had software. So far, we've had rule-based software, which says if X is bigger than Y, do this or that. So instructions, rules, etc. We've had that, since time immemorial, ever since we've had factories, basically. So I couldn't possibly imagine why it should be any different with AI. And second, we've got timestamps. Timestamps, well, can be used for monitoring stuff. But on the other hand, it's also a practical tool to support payroll processing. Everything's got two sides. A knife can be used for killing someone. You can also use it to cut bread. Same thing for AI. It's completely up to us, human beings, to decide how to use AI. And at the risk of repeating myself, an automatic thermostat that controls your heating to keep the temperature at 21 degrees centigrade at all times is something very convenient. But you could also think about it as, something monitoring you in your own home. So I would like to repeat what I said earlier. People tend to go for convenient solutions. I've implemented things like that in companies myself, and I've seen that operators have been asking for that themselves. They were fed up with pushing a lot of buttons or clicking on a screen. What they wanted to have is solutions that they could operate at the push of one button. We've got automation already, and AI is basically nothing but an improvement to the automation solutions we already have. I regret that the discussion is so highly emotional, and sometimes I have difficulties understanding it. So let's hope to be able to continue this dialogue next time round at EMO 2023, so as to bring the applications to the shop floor. Thank you very much, and bye-bye.
A very warm welcome to our panel discussion, The Future of Sustainability. Sustainability is the tool for businesses for fighting climate change. It is a core topic for businesses, and production especially must be revamped entirely, and that's exactly what we want to do. We want to look at production from different viewpoints. We want to look at policy, at science, at businesses, and at sustainability promoter. There will be two main questions. What is driving sustainability in production? What's the source for this development? And then experiences from real life. What experiences already exist? What have we learned? What has already been prompted? Third, what are the opportunities and the risks? Where are issues and how can we tackle this challenge. And then we have a politician with us today, and he knows a lot about this topic. So what can policymakers do, and what do they already do, and how can we think about this in a networked way? I am very sure that this panel discussion will be very exciting, and I would like to invite you to share your questions with us, and at the end of the discussion we'll have a Q&A session. And of course, you can share your experiences of this panel discussion through the hashtag EMO 2023. Let us know what you think about this discussion. Now, I would like to present to you our guests today. Our first panelist is tuned in. Bosch has been climate neutral since February 2020, and this knowledge is multiplied now through Bosch Climate Solutions into the market. She's tuned in from Stuttgart. Welcome, CEO Bosch Climate Solutions, Ms. Donya Amer. Hello and welcome. Hello, thank you very much for the invitation. It's a very beautiful event. Thank you. Thank you. Our next guest next to me, he is the chairman of the CDU parliamentary group. In 2019, he was part of the negotiations of the German climate action plan, Mr. Ralf Brinkhaus. Thank you for the invitation. I am looking forward to this exciting discussion. Our next guest is a scientist, and he's predicting in the upcoming 10 years the industry will decide about how it will be revamped and newly organized. Mr. Christoph Herrmann, he is head of machine tools and sustainable productions and life cycle engineering at the University in Braunschweig. Now, what is the business's perspective? We have the chairman of the managing board of Grob-Werke GmbH from Mindelheim, Mr. German Wankmiller, with us today. Hello, thank you for the invitation. I'm delighted to be here. It's a very successful event. This is a very nice background too, these green colors. I would like to invite you to talk to us about your different viewpoints, your different positions. Your position, Ms. Amer, of course, too. Please let us know, give us an initial statement. Ms. Amer, please begin. Thank you very, very much. Climate change is, of course, expensive, but doing nothing is even more expensive. We are on a voyage. Climate change has not arrived in the managing boards. That's where we want to start. Bosch Climate Solutions is supporting businesses in their transformation processes and speeding these up. And of course, we need to make sure that competitiveness is maintained. So climate change, climate action is expensive, but doing nothing is even more expensive. Thank you. Mr. Wankmiller, what is your perspective? From the viewpoint of the mechanical engineering, sustainability, climate and CO2 reduction is very, very important for the competitiveness in the future. It is super important to come up with machines that respect sustainability in order to stay competitive, and we need to do this in cooperation with science and with universities, institutes, and we want to be pioneering in this in the future. Mr. Herrmann, pioneering in technology means being sustainable. Sustainability needs to be a vital part of that, and sustainability is something absolute. It comes with clear goals, and I think that will be the driving force for innovation in the future. Mr. Brinkhaus, I am very excited that sustainability is now at the core of this discussion, sustainable production and life cycles of products. When talking about fighting climate change, we often talk about decarbonization, about renewable energies, about photovoltaics and solar energy, but I think this field is a lot broader. So production comes in here. Production is a pioneering field in Germany, so we have a lot to offer. That's why I'm looking forward to seeing the German industry really pioneering further on. And what you already mentioned is about life cycle of products. It is about recycling products. And I would be delighted to see policy makers engaging more and more in this topic. And this is a very fruitful event today. I would like to talk about practical experiences and examples. Let's talk about the status quo. Why are you committing in this field? You are one of the first ones venturing out. Why did you start being committed for sustainability? BCS had always had the philosophy in venturing for life. Many years ago, we started being engaged in this topic. So Bosch has had the goal of becoming climate neutral for a while. It's part of the philosophy of our business. And we are not only responsible for our clients and our employees, but for society. So in 2019, we went to talk to the press and we went public. We stated that by February 2020 we could become climate neutral. And when an industrial business with more than 70 million euros in turnover, if we can become climate neutral and implement climate neutrality, that's of course a textbook example for other businesses. We've been taking this step at a very early step, and we wanted to be a role model for the industry. It is now part of our business's culture, of our philosophy. And the knowledge from these 2,000 projects of energy efficient production is something that we want to share. And since past April, we've been sharing our experiences. You already mentioned a few points, but why are you pioneering in this transformation process? Why did you start committing to becoming more sustainable? From our viewpoints, there are two criteria, just as Mr. Brinkhaus already mentioned. The mechanical engineering sector in Germany is a very strong sector. We are export-orientated, and we are supplying the world with high-quality machines. And this goes hand in hand with energy consumption. So sustainability is a core issue. And then there was the transformation in the propulsion, so away from combustion and towards electromobility. So we wanted to stay pioneering in the international comparison. These are the new challenges, the new tasks, where sustainability plays a major role, and it poses significant challenges to German mechanical engineers. The topic of our first part is what's the driving force for sustainability in production. I have a policymaker and I have a scientist, two different viewpoints. How would you describe? According to you, what was the starting point in policy making? Because this really goes hand in hand with businesses, with the economy. Of course, there are facts. We realize that the world is changing, climate is changing. We already experienced the repercussions, and this needs to be put into action in policy making too. And then this goes hand in hand with the businesses. There is an expectation, of course. The German automobile industry says that we don't only will produce cars with less CO2 emissions. No, we want to change the entire production process. So then this is then the chemical industry comes in, of course, the supplying industry comes in, and then this goes back to policy making. So when we want to render the chemical industry CO2 neutral, we need green hydrogen. So what can you as the chemical industry do in order to do that? So this is sort of a circle, and everybody plays their part. The world is changing, that's a fact, and we need to really set goals and reach them because life on this planet will change. According to you, what are the driving forces for this development? I think everybody, there are our clients, there's the civic society, there's policy making, and then in your business maybe that's the case too. Young people are asking questions, they have expectations. Young people want to be part of projects that represent their ethical claims. So there's not one driving force, no, there are many. The world is a mosaic composed of many, many parts. And I think the great picture can be a very beautiful one. So we need to find a balance here, so let's take another look at the science. From your perspective, for production technology, is there something that we need to take a closer look at? Yes, I think there's always push and pull factors, of course. The push factors is, of course, that scientists create a framework. What are the implications of technology? What does technology mean for the environment? So engineers and civic society, they look at this from very, very different viewpoints. And we need to create innovations, of course, innovations that can be implemented then. So science provides solutions, that's a driving force, but then we have the clients. These clients are the pull factors. They expect us to come up with solutions. Your question is, where's production in this? Production is, there are large expectations to production. It's not only about decarbonizing buildings. Production does not only have that lever. It's not only about green energy, but there are many, many different innovations demanded here. And that's a much larger challenge than that for electromobility, for example. Ms. Amer, what types of businesses are approaching you for your support? Many, many different businesses. When we founded Bosch Climate Solutions on the basis of Bosch experiences, we are a very international company, of course. Many of them come from the industry and they need our support. They want to change their production, those with already high quality when it comes to sustainability. They want to know how to render their plants, their facilities more and more sustainable. And when taking this first step, the directors, the leaders of these companies have already taken a major first step. Through digital solutions, we often surprise our clients when we show them how digitalization can be used in order to become more energy efficient. Mr. Wankmiller, how do you approach your projects? There are 3 steps important for us. What is the market demanding? And this, of course, influences our machines. Then there is the supply chains. What's the energy consumption of our machine? And then in the downstream process, we ask ourselves, what are our clients doing with our machines? What are they using them for? Are they energy sufficient? And then in the upstream process, of course, the suppliers come in. It's about the material, about acquisition of raw materials. So the entire process is involved here. And this is not simple. This is a straining process, but then it can be very, very successful if the entire chain is involved. And we can only approach this holistically. How did your clients react? We did have very positive reactions. The automobile industry, Mr. Brinkhaus mentioned this. These people buy our cars, they drive them, and they really think that sustainability is more and more important. So they have expectations, and that's exactly what we use. That's how we adapt our processes and, of course, our competitiveness. Ms. Amer, you are very experienced. What are the ideal measures, the ideal tools? Is there a plan that can be applied by any business, or are these different plans? Yes and no. When it comes to industry, we often use different tools. Energy efficiency is first. Second is the renewable energies, generating one's own green power, and then creating a certain independence. Of course, acquisition of green power is also very, very important. Together with our clients, we do that through compensation. Compensation is the fourth step. I think through these 4 steps, sustainability can be implemented. But what's very important to us is that we often hear that sustainability is more and more important for many, many projects, and this positive spirit is really necessary, but quality needs to be maintained, of course. So transparency and a strategy are very important. A project where it was transparent how we got to the idle position. Projects like that need to be promoted more and more. Mr. Herrmann, are there best practices that you have experienced? And Mr. Brinkhaus, I would like to invite you to say something on that. You are in touch with businesses, with the economy, of course. Give us specific examples and experiences. Yes, there are many. When it comes to SMEs, for example, there are many success stories because they make their plans in the long run. Schmalzing-Glatten is one example. This is a family business in the 5th generation, and for many, many years they've been producing energy positively in their business. And this is really part of their ID for their location. They're a pioneer in Germany. I don't want to concentrate on one business, but on Industry 4.0, the improvement of automation processes. It's not about the large steps taken. So maybe one assembly line is changed, maybe the screw is used in a different angle. And this then increases and is turned into larger for process automation, for mechanical engineering, for all different sectors. And from there we can help the entire world producing more and more efficient. Every year we become maybe only 1% or even less more efficient. But this comes with a huge leverage effect. So if we talk about sustainability, we need to broaden our horizon. I think renewable energies are great, but that's not enough. And I think from Germany we can really make a difference through our process automation. And in order to have a large impact, and many businesses in their sectors are really motivated and committed to doing so. They approach me and they show me, we have improved here, we improved there, in little parts. The many thousand little steps taken. I would like to step in and maybe counteract a little bit. I think the direction in which you're going is right, but there's a difference. I don't think that 1% or 0.5% are enough. Single production sites have implemented a lot when it comes to sustainability in the past years, but what we see now is that we can use data, for example, a lot more. 0.5 to 1% CO2 emission reduction is not the goal that we must aim for. We have the possibilities now, and we can fund these projects. And digitization must play a much larger role. In the upcoming years, we must make sure that the developments are larger. 1% reduction in the industry is not enough. I didn't really mean it like that. It's not. I didn't say that 1% is enough. I just wanted to say that the little steps, they really have large positive repercussions. And in my experience, there is not that one large button, that one lever, but we need to combine many little steps. So the love for the detail, for the little steps, I just wanted to emphasize that. Large steps in technology improvement are, of course, very important. Yes, of course, that was only a misunderstanding. The little steps can, of course, lead to much more CO2 reduction.
Okay, we're talking about efficiency gains by 2030 to be achieved by 90%. So we need to bring down our effort by 90%. Otherwise, we don't even stand a chance of getting anywhere near to the Paris Climate Agreement targets. That's one thing. So the efforts required are going to be enormous, which still means that we have to bring a lot of small things together. And second, we need to systematically analyze the hotspots. Energy efficiency is certainly one thing, but there's a much bigger lever in material and resource efficiency along the entire value chain. We need to tackle this very systematically. Where are the trouble spots, and where are the most urgent measures required? Material and resource efficiency. Would anybody like to come in on this? I'd love to, says Mr. Wankmiller. Every company has different possibilities and conditions to start tackling their problems. A good precondition in Germany is that we have universities and universities of applied science. We've got highly innovative companies which, in times like these, can come up with transformation examples in the automotive industry, for example, which can make a huge difference. So there have been excellent examples of cooperation and joint analysis efforts before things were put into practice. So we are very good on that front, but we can still improve our performance in order to be faster still in the future. Professor Herrmann, you have a lot of component knowledge. What do you think? How can companies learn better from the universities, from science? Well, a lot of things have to come together here. Politics should create incentives. They should provide support schemes for companies, also for SMEs, to be able to make that transformative leap. You know, we need more incentives for promoting research. We're very good already as far as this is concerned, but we can still up the game a little bit. And what about, the so-called real laboratories, learning factories? Open that up to SMEs. That needs to happen. In addition to that, there needs to be greater acceptance in society for these things. We, as a society, have to understand that this is what is required if we want to be, thought leaders. What about you, Mr. Brinkhaus? Well, I concur with the previous speaker that our university environment is great. It's the envy of the world. And we've got great cooperation schemes between industry and academia. I think we can still become better when it comes to putting our academic findings and outcomes into palpable results. Let me give you an example, hydrogen. Now, of course, green hydrogen is something that we cannot produce based on our own renewable energies for our entire energy demand. But once if we are to master hydrogen, we need, real-life laboratories, but they cannot be funded from the industry alone, and that's why it's important to have political support. We need to throw money at things like this, and here comes a key component. In other countries, big companies would do that job. Now we have, or rather, big companies would take up all that funding, and we have to make sure that these real-life laboratories are also open to medium-sized companies. Very important, says Mr. Wankmiller, because, setting up a new process in a laboratory setting is one thing. Rolling it out in real life is a completely different story, and this is where laboratories are required, which, can be used for the benefit of mass production. By the way, Mr. Wankmiller, what kind of drive and propulsion systems are you envisaging for the future? Mr. Wankmiller says, well, e-mobility combined with a battery-driven storage system is certainly the more immediate future. A little bit further in the future, I'm thinking about hydrogen solutions, but the more immediate alternative to combustion cars is battery-driven vehicles. This can be produced in large volumes and also gives you a certain degree of reliability and longevity. Why don't we talk about facts and figures for some time? What will be the price label that comes with that? Ms. Amer, how much investment will be required to do all the things we just mentioned? Well, it's not easy. In terms of energy efficiency, Bosch has pledged 1 billion by 2030 in energy efficiency. So that's 100 million euros per year. We have run tenders internally. Project teams can apply for that if they have creative energy efficiency solutions. We've got different criteria by which we hand out these funds. It's about CO2 impact, cost reduction, etc. And usually we are aiming for a return on investment of 2 to 6 years. Over and above that, we will be investing more than 1 billion euros in renewable energies and the procurement of green certificates. So a company of our size, that's one thing. We can afford it, but it remains true that, climate protection comes at a cost, but it's going to be much more expensive if we don't do anything. We've decided at Siemens to act early on and to try to make a difference as quickly as we can. Who else would like to share some figures? Mr. Brinkhaus? Well, ultimately, no one knows what it will cost because we're talking about the transformation of the entire industry, aren't we? And we're not only talking about climate change, there's also the scarcity of other raw materials. So we need to completely, make a U-turn. So far, our economy has relied on a certain number of raw materials, which we knew that they would be finite. Now we are facing a much bigger transformation. The world is heating up. There's more and more people living on the earth, and whenever you talk about raw materials, crude oil, precious metals, etc., all of this is finite, and that's why we need to get out of one resource unit. We need to improve our performance by the factor 5 to 7. This is about efficiency gains. So efficiency gains are required not only in terms of CO2 emissions, but across the board. Mr. Wankmiller talking now. A lot of investment will be required. The investment that is required on the part of companies is as high as never before, and it can only be made if the public and private sector join forces. I'm talking about PP, private-public partnerships. That's absolutely needed. Otherwise, the concerned companies cannot even stand a chance of, footing the bill themselves. Ms. Amer, have you met companies that have approached you which say, well, we should and it would be a good idea to do X, Y, Z, but will we still be competitive? Because we are talking about huge investments after all. So my question is, how can companies remain competitive despite the required innovations, or investments rather? It's true, companies keep asking us, when are we going to see a return of investment on investment? What's the cost of doing it? What's the cost of not doing something? So it's these kind of questions that people are asking us. And this goes to show that a holistic approach is required. Together with our customers, we try to identify solutions, a mix of long-term and short-term solutions, because after all, you're going to have to do things gradually. It's not, a big bang thing that will save the world. Rather, it's about making one smart step after the other to achieve carbon neutrality on the shop floor. Mr. Wankmiller, I'd like to address you one more time because I want to learn something from you. Can I ask you, where are you in the current transformation, you and your company? Answer, well, we have gone through, half the way, I think. So 50% of the way has been completed. We've done a lot of digitization. We've done a lot in terms of sustainability. We've done a lot in terms of reducing our CO2 footprint. We started on that journey early on, 4 years ago. And, if the automotive industry makes announcements like this, well, they tend to implement them also. But we are also seeing that despite the promising beginnings, we are far from being there. It's a long-term investment, which will pay off in the end, I am convinced. And those who don't embark on that road will fall behind in international competition. What kind of external support did you use, are you still using, and what kind of support could you make do with? Well, as I mentioned before, we are cooperating with the universities, Fraunhofer Institute. Sometimes we use consultancy services of the likes of Bosch. And we would like to see that engineering training in Germany keep its high significance and high quality. It is crucial for Germany to have well-trained engineers that we train ourselves. That's the important backbone for the industry. Over and above that, we need subsidy schemes that support all of this. How much time do we have left, Professor Herrmann, to turn the tide? Well, there's hardly any time left. The ambitious internationally agreed objectives show how much ambition is required, and we also need to admit that other countries have realized that it is necessary to embark on a green path of production if you want to be amongst the leaders. So we have to make sure that we remain at the top of this movement, because otherwise others are going to take over. I'd say we've only got 10 years perhaps to meet the 2030 targets, and the latest ruling by the German Constitutional Court also showed us that we really need to improve our performance. Mr. Brinkhaus, question: what kind of incentives can politics provide? We just talked about the urgency of climate protection measures. How can politics motivate companies? Well, we have put together an overall package which is very good. Needs to gain traction now. We are expanding the use of renewable energies. Planning procedures have to be accelerated. We're way too slow here. On the other hand, you spoke about e-mobility. E-mobility is certainly the kind of mobility that we're going to see more of over the next 10 years. And for that, we need to improve the infrastructure, charging stations. The funds are available. Need to start building these charging stations. Or what about, research? We need to upgrade the research landscape. What I want to say is everything is readily available. It's for us to use these tools. Now, If there's one thing that you can accuse us of, it may be that the findings and insights that we have are put into practice too slowly. So now the time has come to bring in more speed. We don't need new findings and insights. We've got everything that it takes. We now need to, get traction and gain speed. There's one thing missing, says Mr. Herrmann. We need to invest in our universities and schools. And there's a lot of catching up for us to do. If you look at other countries, what they are doing to create attractive learning environments which are able to reach out to different parts of society, it's incredible, especially in Lower Saxony. Very difficult. What I want to say is, once again, that we need to create attractive learning environments if we want to make young people enthusiastic and want to take up a university course in engineering. Now, Ms. Amer, you have learned a lot in the context of your career. If I were to give you a magic wand, and if you had one wish outside the established patterns of thinking, if you were completely free, and if you think about Germany and its production environment, also from an international perspective, what would you do? What would you change? Well, speed has been mentioned. Speed has been mentioned by many of the panelists, so it's certainly a key aspect. Other key aspects are realism, openness, courage to be open to new developments. This is what is missing. The debate that we are seeing these days before the national election about climate change is important, but it's not the only thing, even though it's an important thing. And with the current generation of leaders, we have an excellent chance because they are very well suited to make a change much faster than in the past. So if I had one wish, I would like to see things gather speed, more courage to embark on creative paths. What would you like to see, gentlemen? What about you, Professor Herrmann? Well, I would like to develop a better understanding to the effect that production is the driving force behind Germany's prosperity. Production industry is where you have the best paid jobs. Many, companies are doing whatever they can to keep their locations in Germany. So this should be recognized by society at large and by politicians. Because this could help, make the engineering professions more attractive, and we need more engineers going forward. Mr. Wankmiller, well, I've spoken a lot about what I would like to see, but more generally, people need to be courageous enough. There need to be people who are prepared to take a risk. And this is where I think about, young people, people who are in love with technology, people who are adamant about putting theoretical findings and insights into practice, regardless of whether they come from university or have gone through training. Different question to you, Mr. Brinkhaus. Do you think that the plans put forward by our politicians and by the conservatives, are they good enough? Have you covered, all the relevant questions? Of course, it's difficult to cover everything, says Mr. Brinkhaus, but I think they are good enough for the time being. It's not about politicians defining today the kind of tools that will help us fight climate change. We cannot possibly do that. Politicians today need to create adequate frameworks to let people develop good ideas. In terms of CO2 reduction, we have now managed to include, heating and mobility in the certificate trading, so everybody knows that starting in 2030, 95 million tons of CO2 will be available. So you'd better prepare yourselves. And this is why, scientists and Company owners are thinking about that now because they know what's going to hit them in 2030. So I'm very much convinced that in the second half of this decade, we will know so much more than we know now, so I'm pretty confident. Of course, we can always be better, but, ultimately we're going to get there, and our work will never be done. This is for sure. So why don't we go to the questions that we've received from our audience? First question, the carbon footprint of a given task is very complex. Determining the carbon footprint, how can this be done in the future, seeing the rapid technological change? Well, let me try and answer as follows. There is an international standard as to how to prepare so-called carbon footprints. We are now training more and more of our engineers to learn to use these kinds of tools so as to not keep that knowledge to a selected group of experts. What is still missing is that it's the data that are required for that. Partly it's our own data from German medium-sized companies. So, we shouldn't have other countries assessing our technologies. But, we are gradually making sure that this knowledge is no longer limited to a small group of experts, but it's rolled out more broadly. There is the greenhouse gas protocol, says Mr. Wankmiller, to calculate and define greenhouse gas emissions, and this is what we are using in our company. Ms. Amer speaking. We are also supporting our customers in terms of calculating the carbon footprint. Today we are doing it based on individual products. In the future, however, we are going to always think about the CO2 footprint too when we offer our products. So calculating the carbon footprint is very important because customers are increasingly interested in that. Very interesting, not easy to calculate, but anything but impossible. So we've embarked on that journey, and we'd like to see more companies join us. Next question. What possibilities do companies have to receive public funding when it comes to sustainability solutions? Mr. Herrmann answering, there are a lot of public funding schemes which are specifically geared towards SMEs. There is the 7th Energy Framework Program put forward by the Ministry of Economic Affairs. So I believe there's a lot of different tools available in Germany which can be further developed and is suitable for smaller and larger companies alike. Mr. Brinkhaus is speaking now. There is no alternative to try to become more environmentally friendly with or without public subsidies. Take the German automotive industry. It took quite some time for them to start e-mobility. I've always wondered why they wouldn't be fast, because I always felt that e-mobility was definitely a thing of the future, whereas it seemed to me that German car makers would wait way too long, in my assessment, until public funding was available. But apart from that, I believe that the end users' expectations will be such that companies simply cannot afford not to do anything in terms of resource efficiency or cutting CO2 emissions. In terms of public funding, says Ms. Amer, I would like to say that public funding will be required, and the environment is quite difficult here. We are working together with companies. We are supporting companies trying to find public funding for their climate protection measures, but it's not easy. Also, it's not always, illogical what kind of projects are supported and what projects are not supported. So in this respect, I would like to see more clarity and easier procedures. So there's a big question mark in the eyes of many companies who simply don't know for what kind of activities public funding is available and for what projects no public funding is available. Last question, is sustainability a sales argument for investment goods? What's the status quo, and what's your forecast for 2 to 3 years down the road? We are already seeing this as a sales argument, and sustainability aspects will become an even more important sales argument in the future. Customers have asked us about the energy consumption of our machines for years now, so they seem to be very interested in that. They also ask about the reusability of our machines' materials. Can our machines be reconfigured, etc.? All this goes to show that customers are increasingly focusing on sustainability, also with a view to dwindling resources. I would even like to take things a little further, says Mr. Herrmann. Unless you do sustainability, if I may put it that way, you're not going to be able to sell your products anymore. But that's an on-top issue. Of course, you have to provide highly reliable and robust machines, but on top of that, there comes the sustainability requirement now. Okay, thank you very much for this panel. I'd like to thank all of you. Thanks to you, Ms. Amer from Hanover. Thanks for having joined the panel. And of course, I'd also like to thank Professor Herrmann, Mr. Wankmiller, and Mr. Brinkhaus for participating on the panel. Right, ladies and gentlemen, there's now going to be a short break. We have to do some rearrangements on the stage. The next topic is the future of business, and the primary focus will be on, work 4.0. If you enter a new work in a search engine, you will get 161 million hits for the German-speaking region only. So this goes to show that there is hardly any company which can afford not looking into sustainability, I'd say. So it is a very good topic, very good to have on the agenda. It's very good for us to be discussing this issue, because the questions of how we are going to be working in the future cannot be solved by any company on their own. There needs to be a joint effort, because the future of work is about human beings after all.
Which is why part of this debate must be values, emotions of people, hopes and fears when it comes to the future of work. On this topic, we would like to now dwell on different viewpoints. We will talk about the smart factory, what will it look like, and where is the position of the human, what are the tasks for humans in these factories. New work models, how can they look like, what makes sense, what is efficient, how can these humans be taken on board, all the employees. So it's also about the cultural transition. How does that look like? It is exactly the same for every single business, or is this an individual issue? Who needs to regard what, and how do we take all the employees on board? I am now looking forward to this debate on the future of business. We will look into different positions during this debate, and you're invited to share your questions with us through the chat, and they will be on this iPad here on stage, and I will include them in a discussion. Our hashtag is EMO2023. Please use that for your posts or for following what other guests have already shared about this event. I am now asking for a technological expert to show me the slides. I will use the time for presenting a representative of businesses, Chief Representative DMG Mori AG, Mr. Maurice Eschweiler. Welcome. Thank you for the invitation. And our next guest is, from the workers' union perspective, the senior authorized representative of IG Metall from Augsburg, Mr. Michael Leppek. Thank you for being here. Thank you. And tuned in from the perspective of science, the head of the chair of human resource management at the Karlsruher Institut for Technologie, Professor Petra Nieken. Thank you for being with us. Hello from Karlsruhe. Different viewpoints will be guiding this discussion. So let's look at the smart factory. The smart factory, the scenario devoid of humans, more and more automated production, digitalization, VI, AI, all these technological core topics are present. So what is the role of the human beings in the smart factory? Ms. Nieken, what is your opinion? Thank you very much. I am not sure whether the factory of the future will be completely devoid of humans. We will see, but the human being will play a major role. Industry is evolving more and more, and still human beings are working in the businesses, in the factories, but they increasingly have leading roles, controlling roles. And the little tasks, let's call them like that, are being done by robots more and more. But the question is, what's the position of the human being? Human beings will interact with the machine. The question is, who's in control, the machine or the human being? And how will the interaction look like? And these questions are in the flow. What's the status quo for this question? The status quo is that 42 to 47% of the jobs that we have right now are partly influenced by technology. So there's the technologization. So yes, work will change. There will be less manual work, but of course, different new types of work will evolve. So 10 years ago, we didn't have jobs that we have now, for example, video influencer. So this field is in the flow, and it will be very exciting to see what the smart factory will look like in a couple of years. What is your opinion, Mr. Eschweiler? I don't think the smart factory will be devoid of people. The human being will stay at the focus, at the core of the factory. There will be different tasks. Ms. Nieken has already said, so repetitive tasks can be taken over by robots, of course. But anything not linear will, of course, in the future still be managed by humans. Empathetic tasks, leadership, that's where human beings will be needed. And I do not believe that there will be less work. I believe that work will change. So the work of the future is secured. There are increased offers in work, but the difficulty here is that the jobs will change majorly, and we will have to make offers, job offers to a mass of employees for jobs that will look like completely differently in 10 years. Mr. Leppek, what's your opinion? We are used to changes, and we're not afraid of changes, and employees aren't either. But I think when it comes to fears, is that these changes right now are happening rapidly. When we look at different changes in different industries, what we see is that this industrial revolution, the fourth, some say we're about to be in the fifth industrial revolution, is that the phases are really, really short. And people are not really used to changing that quickly, not as quickly as technology is changing, and that's a major challenge. The core question is, are we behind the machines, or is the machine leading us, or are we leading the machine? So this is about providing better working conditions in the future. And we need to shape these questions, and we don't have much time. What are the solutions that you have? The main solution is, of course, cooperation. We must work together. And there are beautiful examples. Please give us one example. Yes, of course. For instance, in mobility. In a very short amount of time, not even half a year, scientists, policymakers, and employers came together under the patronage of policymaking, and they asked these questions. What can we do? So it's not about the Volkswagen or the Porsche. No, it's about the suppliers. It's about the machine tool producers. These part of the industry have the largest problems. The problem lies really with the supply chains, and that's where we have to engage. That's where we have to fund. We need clear regulations, clear rules for the future through transformation networks. There will be education and training programs, and cooperation is key on this in order to take our employees of tomorrow into the future. Ms. Nieken, I mentioned emotions in the beginning, so about that psychological aspect. Humans are no machines. How do we take the diversity of people, all of these different human beings on board while not having much time? You already said so. Humans are no machines, so therefore there's no button to push. So of course there's no solution for every single employee. But of course, as leaders, as trade unions, as employers, we are all asked to take our employees on board. And of course, we must not forget that digitalization is a major opportunity. I can now send learning programs, learning opportunities to anywhere in the world. I don't have to travel anymore. I can now learn and take part in these programs in the evenings after work. And the basic idea here is taking these people on board, showing them the added value and motivate them. And that's our task. That's the leader's task. Digitization is there, yes, and it can be scary, but if we cooperate, if we work together, we can manage this. And I think the COVID-19 pandemic has highlighted that if we work together, if we stand together, a lot can be done. Leaders play a major role here. We heard this many times, leaders as coaches. That's great, but do people actually want that? How many employees want that coaching? A leader as a coach does means that there's somebody who pushes, who is stating this and that needs to happen. So this is sort of counteracting self-responsibility. Well, in science, we've seen that this really depends on the philosophy of a business, of the atmosphere. Many businesses are very hierarchical. There's a strict hierarchy. And leaders must be ready to work together with their employees, and employees must be ready to work self-responsibly and make their own decisions. And this is a process that not happens very rapidly, not overnight. But if we take the employees really on board and pick them up where we are, step by step, this is possible. But it is only possible if we do not leave behind anybody. What's your opinion? I think this needs to be approached in a differentiated way. From the viewpoint of employees and the staff, there are those who have already arrived in the digitalized world. And employees, most of the times, know a lot more than their leaders. And this is a fact that needs to be accepted. The 50-year-old needs to accept that the 25-year-old knows a lot more about digitalization. That's a major problem. And in a different situation is that there are employees who have never really come into touch with digitalization, at least not in their jobs. And here it is of vital importance to create a fear-free atmosphere. Digitalizing is often about fear. COVID was about fear. And we often, the argumentation is far too much about fear. And digitalization is helpful. It provides solutions to demographic change, for example. We don't have enough people to do all the jobs that need to be done right now. So this needs to be regarded very differentiated. And we cannot have a culture of fear. Do you agree? I think a culture of fear is just a bad thing. Fear does not help anybody. I know that this is supposed to be a controversial debate, yes, but most people don't actually have that fear. Most people have one or two smartphones at home, at the latest through their kids and their learning programs. They will know what a Zoom meeting is. So in private lives, this really is present. But what we need to highlight is the opportunities. I heard somebody say that the vision is the little jobs, overhead jobs in an environment full of dust and noise. These must be eliminated, and this can be happened through digitalization. And we can create jobs that really make people happy, where they really want to go. People work at Amazon because they earn money there and because they have to do that. But this can be automized. And people who work in logistics and in special parts of production or in mechatronics, and these people can be taken into different types of jobs. So on the one hand, there will be less jobs, but on the other hand, more automation. So the demographic change and automation can be intertwined, and through that we can improve employment for tomorrow. That's the way to go. When we look at it that way, this is also about a debate about values in the future of work. Younger generations have changed, they have changed demands. In 5 to 10 years, what do you think? Where will the jobs in Germany be? All of these areas are changing. The pandemic has driven this. More and more home office, more and more working from home, phase models. What are the scenarios that you think will be implemented in the coming years much more? People always strive for the things that they don't have. So working from home is one of these things. The pandemic has forced us to work from home. Among my employees, people really want to come back to the office. So aspiring for that which you don't have is clearly happening. So I'm not really sure what my opinion is on this. People live in social interactions. They cannot. I am really annoyed by all the Zoom and Teams meetings. I'm really looking forward to more and more looking people in the eyes again. I don't generate new clients through team meetings. And this personal interaction is very important. Digitalization, of course, comes with advantages, but there won't be an entirely digitalized working world.
So a mix will be required. There's different cultures, different kind of people out there. There's people who prefer working in the office. Of course, you cannot take your milling machine home with you, but by and large, 75% of those surveyed, and this is borne out by our own studies by PwC, 75% of people say that if possible, and we are talking primarily about white-collar jobs, they would like to be able to work from home 2 or 3 days a week. And that's where we need to meet people. So, presuming that the number of skilled workers will go down, we will have to take into account their requests increasingly. And this will also change the work of works councillors, for example. 15 years ago, I would have said, no, we don't want to work from home, regardless of there's a pandemic, yes or no. Now I'm saying, yes, we would like to work from home. We would like to even see this guaranteed by law. This is how things are changing. And you spoke about values. When I drove here, I read a survey by PwC, not our own survey, and they say that approximately 50% of employees below 34 years say that they don't want to work with an employer where they earn a maximum amount of money, but where they feel a purpose, a sense of being, and this is where topics such as sustainability come in, and we will see their significant increase going forward. We'd better be prepared for that. Companies better be prepared for that, and executives better be prepared for that. So all of this needs to be borne in mind. We need an utmost degree of flexibility. Who exactly? Well, both the employer, when it comes to the offerings to the employees, but the employee representatives also need to become more flexibility. And now I would like to argue with you. There's a lot of catching up to do here, because requests and desires are so different, so diverse, that one-size-fits-all contracts are not going to be feasible in the future. We need greater flexibility to live through times of crisis. And imagine a young employee coming to you asking for a job bicycle, and you cannot offer it because you haven't got it. You can be sure that you've done something wrong, that you have some catching up to do. And this goes to show that we need to become, that employers need to become more flexible in terms of what they're offering to future employees. Flexibility, says Ms. Nieken, is that both sides are prepared to make a compromise, both the employer and the employee. So flexibility is something that goes both ways. There are so-called life phase models, but a central thread is that employees want to perceive a kind of purpose in their work. People tend to be less loyal towards their employer. They change the employer more frequently, and employers better be prepared for that. Also, we should prepare ourselves for a world where we work differently in our offices. Today, very many of us still have their own office space. This will change. The office increasingly will become a place to talk to people, to exchange views. So the way we organize office work will be different from our today's organization, and this will be reflected in the office layout. A lounge room will be required, team working space will be required. And when it comes to production, you rightly said that you cannot take your milling machine home with you. So is it fair that 50% of the workforce can work flexibly, whilst 50% need to be on site all the time? This is also a key element of the debate that we're currently having with our clients. Well, it's possible to find smart solutions for that. On the shop floor, you cannot offer working from home, that's for sure. But speaking about fairness, and that's always a big discussion about working from home, we have entered into an agreement with employee representatives which says that you may work from home if your line manager approves, but also if the colleagues in your department approve of it. So this is a principle based on subsidiarity, and that's how I understand flexibility. Establishing smart solutions on a small scale, which can make a big difference and take into account the needs and concerns of people, of those affected. This is so much better than imposing a one-size-fits-all scheme from above. I don't think there's any point doing that. It's correct. It's about fairness. I don't really want to contradict you, because, what are you going to tell the machine operator at the milling machine, and how to explain that the office staff is allowed to work from home? This is where tailor-made solutions are required. Blue-collar workers have different working environments from white-collar workers, white-collar staff. And this is why we need tailored solutions, working time models which take into account the specific features of different types of work. So ultimately, it's about the flexibility, and flexibility goes both ways. It needs to come from the employer and from the employee. An employer cannot expect someone to come in for 2 hours only and leave afterwards. But by the same token, it's not possible for the workforce to decide themselves how they want to work. There is a Gallup survey which says that 85% of German employees don't feel any kind of commitment to their employer. And the cost factor associated with that amounts to more than 110 billion euros per year, because there is a lack of commitment. So I am asking, if we see flexibility increase, everybody working from home, everybody becoming so much more flexible, don't you think that this might take a toll on commitment towards your employer? And here I want to talk about, friendship. Friendships are not formed because there's a perfect match, but it's rather because you meet people. It's because you meet people in the first place. So do you think that this flexibility will lead to less less commitment, rather? Well, let me answer as follows. We will always have, specific rules and regulations governing the way we work, especially in industry. We are not a startup company with 5 members of staff where you have so much flexibility that everybody can decide their ways of working themselves. That's not a reality of German industry. Don't get me wrong. Well, as I said before, says Petra Nieken, the office needs to remain a place where people can mix and meet. Teams need to meet on a regular basis. And I believe that people don't want to work from home exclusively. They want to meet their colleagues in the office so as not to get too lonely, That's also a key feature of being employed. Now, you spoke about commitment. Employees' commitment towards their employer is very bad in Germany, I agree, but we're working on that. And I've seen a lot of employee retention schemes out there, aimed at improving employees' loyalty. Programs specifically geared towards women, making a job more compatible with having a family. And this is what we should think about, we as employers. What can we offer our people? Perhaps no longer a company car, but perhaps a company bicycle, or more flexibility, allowing people to work from home if they please, providing them with adequate equipment. This is key to more confidence between the employer and the employee, and only then will we see commitment increase. Now, in Augsburg, in our company, we've seen that staff turnover was higher during the COVID pandemic than in other companies. And we've seen that whenever companies, and there was no works agreement to that effect, by the way, but those companies which responded instantly and said that, well, your health is more important than our profit. Please do go home. We're gonna manage, and we'll also give you, computers to work from home. So you go look after your kids. If they can't go to school right now, we'll manage somehow. These kind of companies have been very successful, and they've managed to instill, a certain sense of loyalty in their employees, because they saw that, wow, my employer really cherishes me and is prepared to appreciate the contribution that I make as employer. So this went down very well with the workforce affected. So at the beginning, when the pandemic first struck, these immediate measures made a big difference, and those companies that did so managed to create much more employee loyalty compared to other companies, recognizing the needs and concerns of people is so important. Or let's talk about, short-term work. In Germany, this has been highly successful. It has helped us save hundreds and thousands of jobs. We already saw that back in 2009 and 2010. This also provided a lot of flexibility and certainty, and it's gone down very well with the workforce affected. So putting people first, providing a good work-life balance, this is what you're saying. The buzzwords that you mentioned were flexibility, and you also spoke about a lot of new tasks that people have to learn. You also spoke about the fact that things are developing faster and faster all the time. We need to learn new things at an ever faster pace. So I'm imagining the following situation. A room has three parameters: height, width, and depth. If you were to apply that to the smart factory, I see that things are increasing in speed all the time, increasing in width, because people are expected to know much more about many more things. So the third feature that should remain the same is the depth factor. And don't you think that there should be much more personality training, if I may call it that, in our companies? Or what about, offering yoga, massages, meditation, offering personal coaches, for people so that they can even hope to, keep a balance in this ever so quickly changing world that we are currently living in? Answer: well, a good corporate culture helps a lot. Everything should be based on good corporate identity. I think there's no point in offering swimming classes, etc. It's important to communicate the corporate values. It's important to lead by example. This is what executives should do, and this will help them deal better with things such as digitization. It's still going to be a Herculean task, but it's going to be doable. So what's required is a sound corporate culture, and this will also take care of the high staff turnover rate and the 85% who don't like to work with their current employer. Well, personal development is something that is much more popular in the United States than in Germany, because there people believe that people who want to lead people should be able to lead themselves to begin with. It's true, no question about that, but whether American tech companies should always serve as an example for us in Germany, I don't know. I think it's a better idea to find our own path forward. What could our own way forward look like, Professor Nieken? Well, I always welcome identifying an own approach. The Americans have their own corporate culture. We have our own corporate culture. Now, the job of a company leader, of an executive, will always be stressful. It's always been stressful, will remain stressful going forward, and that's why we need to support the executives and leaders in our companies. Now, what could the way forward look like? It's about recognizing people's achievements. It's about communicating clear values and targets. It's about being transparent. I don't think that things have to be accelerated all the time because, at the same time, we tend to forget that it's never been so easy to get information. Unlike in the past, you don't have to go to libraries anymore to find information. You can use AI, to calculate a whole lot of things. So my working day is no longer as difficult as in the past. And hope is that this will allow leaders and executives to live up to their most noble tasks, which is, leading people because they don't have to spend their time with cumbersome work. I believe, AI and technology will take away so much work that we can look after human-centric work. We've talked a lot about surveys and polls, but even though we don't like it, but we've done, a poll recently by which we asked 500,000 of employees what was important for them. This was back in 2020, at the beginning of the pandemic, and the most frequent response was keeping one's job. Second, sound working conditions. Third, a decent income. My sister works in the advertising industry, and, sometimes at night she's allowed to drive home in a cab for 12 to 14 euros. Employer pays for that. So it may sound flashy and cool, these kind of jobs, No matter how many yoga classes and swimming classes you offer, there's no point. As long as people are not happy with their actual work, as long as they're not happy with their line managers. So once again, having a good corporate culture is key. People need to feel themselves taken seriously, especially during the pandemic where no one knows what the future holds. What about my kids? What about childcare? So once you identify tailor-made solutions, once you manage to reassure people that their job is safe, that they will be kept on board, this is so much worth more than a yoga class or, getting a voucher for swimming classes. Question: can small and medium-sized companies manage the change? In addition to digitization, we also need to work on our organizational makeup. Who will help SMEs? Isn't there a risk that SMEs might fall behind because bigger companies are much better suited to managing these changes? So what about the role and the fate of SMEs amidst all the changes that we have talked about? Bigger companies may have a bigger budget for these things. Answer: the advantage or the benefit of SMEs is their flexibility, and this also applies here. Now, digitization and sustainability, etc., are huge tasks which consume an awful lot of resources, that's for sure, but then you can, obtain external resources too. SMEs are flexible. They are very agile. Unlike other companies, their very genetic code. Many SMEs don't even want to become big because they don't want to lose their innate flexibility and agility. So I suggest they continue doing what they've done so far. Professor Nieken, you seem to be agreeing. Well, in our research projects, we have indeed seen that SMEs are much more adaptive, much more prepared to try out new things. They tend to be very close to their workforce, to their works counselors, and for them it's easier to try out new things. They tend to not have an HR department or change management department, which doesn't necessarily have to be a disadvantage because it's much easier for SMEs to introduce new things, unlike a big corporation which has to roll out things in a long and cumbersome process. So much more flexibility and agility on the part of SMEs. And I believe that if SMEs want to, they can do it very well. They're in a good starting position, even though it's still going to be a Herculean task. Now, I would like to briefly come in here. I believe it's also going to take, a number of offerings, such as transformation offices or, information on public funding schemes. I know that from Augsburg, where I'm from, and time and again, people come to us telling us that there's so much red tape involved in accessing public funds, making sure that you fill in the forms correctly at the risk of having to pay back huge amounts of money. So what I want to say is that we need, entry-level support. I agree with you what you said about the flexibility and agility of SMEs. But, if you as an SME are primarily supplying to a large car maker, and what if the car maker decides to go all electric? What are you going to do? If you are exclusively focused on combustion technology, you would be happy to benefit from a transformation fund one way or the other to do something else to save your livelihood. And this is where I would like to call upon politicians to also extend their support schemes to SMEs. I don't know whether Mr. Brinkhaus is still around, but this is an area where greater support would be warranted. In Germany, it takes up to 5 years before a new qualification has fully been learned by a skilled worker. That's according to a survey. How can this process be accelerated, and how can we make sure that we don't narrow down our development opportunities? So, in a nutshell, would anybody like to comment on that? Well, there's great examples. Take digitization. There are excellent learning platforms that you can use to obtain initial training in a given subject matter, which you can develop further later on. Of course, vocational schools need to continue to play a role. There's, a special foundation for mechanical engineering. What I want to say is that regardless of all of that, you need to use, digitization offerings, and such offerings are going down extremely well with our people. Also, we don't need new training courses. We need to rather adapt existing training courses and, add digital components. Still, we can become faster. And looking at our European neighbors, it's a good idea to perhaps hire people from abroad, or you might even employ an external expert, digitization expert, who may not happen to live in Germany. It's possible to hire external experts for a certain period of time while not requiring them to move to your location. They might work for your company from abroad. Okay, thank you very much for all your contributions. I'd like to thank Professor Nieken for having joined this panel. Thank you very much. And I'd also like to thank Mr. Leppek and Mr. Eschweiler. Thank you very much for having been here.
Ladies and gentlemen, I am sneaking over there and I already see our next guests. Let's switch the camera over there. Our Mayor of Hanover, Belit Onay. The camera's here. I'm excited to welcome you here. You are a double host. Let's call it like that. You're the Mayor of Hanover, but you're also the head of the advisory board of the Deutsche Messe AG. That's a very great double role. How do you feel as a mayor in a trade fair city as Hanover without trade fairs? Yeah, of course, in Hanover we're very proud of the exhibition grounds. It is really part of the general picture of Hanover, and we have really missed the exhibitions here. The pandemic has really caused major upheavals regarding the trade shows. And these hybrid digital options were really beautifully implemented this year. But Still, we want to welcome international guests again from all across the world. Are there opportunities in these periods where there are no exhibitions? How can we use these periods? Hanover is a place where many people come and travel. Is there another way of making Hanover attractive for all of these people? How can you use these trade-free periods? And of course, this goes hand in hand with the industry, with Deutsche Messe AG. We want to invest against the crisis. We want to create innovations, and we want to support and strengthen the exhibition grounds here in Hanover. And we're right now supporting Hanover as a location for exhibitions. And through this partnership with the Deutsche Messe AG, this is a very exciting offer. This is very attractive. Of course, we made use of the pandemic of that period, but staying digital is not an option for us. That's the right direction. I would like to sort of give you back to Ms. Hentschel. And so back to Ms. Hentschel, thank you very much that you've come here. Welcome, Mr. Onay, Mayor of the city of Hanover. We only just heard so much about sustainability. Regarding the city of Hanover, what is your stance on sustainability, and do you think that businesses and policymakers are going in the right direction? For Hanover, I would say yes. We have a very strong alliance with businesses here in the city, and we are really going deep into networking. 10 years ago, we became a fair trade city. We have committed to the sustainability goals of the United Nations, and we have partnered up with many different municipalities in the regions and with the local businesses. So that's a possibility for us to implement innovations here in the region and in Hanover. And of course, the exhibition landscape, the Deutsche Messe, is of course a major opportunity. I would like to pass the floor to you now. Mr. Welcker, Mr. Schäfer, ladies and gentlemen, and of course all speakers. On behalf of the regional capital of Hanover, I would like to welcome you to this relaunch event for the EMO 2023. Because of the pandemic, this event was staged a little bit differently than it was planned originally, but I'm happy that this was staged digitally. If COVID has taught us anything, it's that we must act flexible in order to transform the working world towards the digitalization. But personal interactions are still something that we do not want to miss, especially when it comes to exhibitions. The pandemic has caused unprecedented upheavals and challenges to many sectors. For Hanover, the exhibitions are part of the system, and they influence the international flair of our city. Many jobs depend on the exhibition grounds in Hanover. And the increasing COVID-19 numbers are not rendering us very positive for the crisis future. But the exhibition grounds have a positive future. People want to come together. The analog contact, the analog dialogues make many things a lot easier, which is why exhibitions will be needed in the future, especially for the international corporations, very important for Hanover. In a global world, A city cannot act only within regional borders, but it must act internationally. It can raise its competence and the knowledge, and it can strengthen the partnerships for businesses and for partnerships so that innovations and funds, of course, come back to the place. This is also very important for skilled workers, for young, qualified employees, for tourists, for those who visit exhibitions, for students, the future skilled workers, the so-called brains in research, in science, and of course for all the creative people. Hanover is a place for events. It is a leading staging place for international exhibitions, and the trade show business has been a very important business, a part of business for decades. And the exhibition grounds are visible everywhere in Hanover. People visit Hanover for the exhibitions. They come here from across the world, and Hanover is the right place for that. It is made for that. The EMO is the trade fair for production technology, and it is a very important trade show for Hanover. I am very delighted that the EMO 2023 will happen under the motto Innovate Manufacturing, for the future of work and productivity and production. Sustainability is increasingly important. And the industry is really raising the bar. It is about sustainability also along the supply chain. Sustainability is not only important for a future that's worth living, but it's also important that so that businesses can save costs. And so sustainability is a win-win project. I'm very excited for all the answers that EMO 2023 will give us for the challenges that we're facing, and of course I'm also excited for all the innovations that will be presented. For Hanover and Germany, the EMO comes with a major importance. I am sure that the EMO will be a major success. I am inviting you all to come here to Hanover. I am looking forward to the EMO in 2 years, and I would like to wish you beautiful insights already now and a lot of success. Thank you very much.
Herzlichen Dank, Herr Onay.
Thank you ever so much, Mr. Onay.
Sehr geehrte Damen und Herren,
Now, ladies and gentlemen, before we conclude, I am pleased to announce a high-caliber speaker who will certainly have something to say on EMO 2023, the General Commissioner of EMO Hannover 2023, Martin Welcker. Good afternoon, Ms. Hentschel. Good afternoon, Mr. Welcker. It's great to have you here. Now, you've spent all day with us, and you've listened to all the contributions with great interest and attention. So, what's it been like for you? I think we got off to a very good start because we managed to address all the aspects that are important for us. We talked about digitization, we talked about labor relations, and we talked about sustainability. At times it became quite clear what the key topics are that we should be addressing in the future. What is your key takeaway? Well, when it comes to digitization, there was the idea of, autonomous driving, autonomous flying. If that's possible, why can't we think about autonomous machines? We're so close to it. We now need to get the traction from consumer sector on the ground, also in production. Also, I learned a lot about, how close employers and employees tend to be to one another when it comes to the way forward. You spoke about yoga classes, which I would fail, I guess, but it's still a good idea. And then, of course, sustainability, a key issue. What also became clear today was the passion in our companies and the passion with which they have accompanied and are accompanying the way forward. So where are we headed in terms of EMO 2023? Well, EMO 2023 will be available 365 days a year. Hashtag EMO 2023. Please do go there. You will find a host of information there. And I'd like to invite the exhibitors, the guests, the visitors, etc., to go there to allow for a certain measure of interoperability. Please do contribute your questions. They will certainly be answered. This will be of key importance so that come 2023 we will be addressing the right kind of questions. So what is your call to the industry? What's the message that people should take away? Well, for politics, I would like to ask you to give us the freedom so that we can give you the solutions. And to my fellow entrepreneurs, well, let's get cracking. We can make it. Sustainability is our day-to-day work, and we've always practiced it. Thank you very much. That's the kind of spirit we all love. Thank you very much, Mr. Welcker. Thank you very much for these insights. Now, distinguished listeners, thank you very much from here for participating all day long. And for our Asian and American guests, there will be a rerun of the live stream tomorrow for our Asian viewers, 7 p.m. Central European Time, and for our U.S. visitors and listeners, the live stream will be available tomorrow at 4 Central European Time. Now, here's a piece of information for our media representatives. The press folder is available at www.emo-hannover.de. There you can not only find the press folder, but it's always a good idea to go there, because there you will be kept updated about the latest EMO events. So, before I conclude, let me tell you that if you want to report on EMO 2023, please use the relevant hashtag EMO 2023. So do stay tuned as we approach 2023. Goodbye, see you soon, and a lot of success in whatever you do. Bye-bye. I'd also like to thank you for being such an excellent host. Thank you very much, Mr. Welcker. Bye-bye.
Jump into the car on a Friday night, I wanna drive with you. Looking for a bar in the nearest town, I've never seen a sky so blue. We don't ever play it and the night is young, it doesn't matter what we do. There ain't nobody like, you look so beautiful. And I'm so lucky to be yours. And you're taking me high. Ain't nobody like you. I'm not coming down. Ain't nobody like you. I could go 1,000 miles as long as I'm with you. Yeah, you're taking me high. Ain't nobody like you. Talking by yourself and you make me smile. I can listen all night long. I tell you about the time when I first met you, listening to a favorite song. Walking on the street when you caught my eyes, something about the way you move. No, there ain't nobody like, so lucky to be yours. And you're taking me high. Ain't nobody like you. I'm not coming down. Ain't nobody like you. I could go 1,000 miles as long as I'm with you. Yeah, you're taking me high. Ain't nobody like you. Ain't nobody like you. Jump into the car on a Friday night, I wanna drive with you. Looking for a bar in the nearest town, I've never seen a sky so blue. And you're taking me